Chapter 397. Let me ask you, are you my follower? In the hazy light, Wang Lu vaguely heard someone asking a question, but for some reason, the voice sounded particularly strange. Although he could understand every word, it seemed to be separated by a layer of something, and it didn't seem real enough. Wang Lu subconsciously asked, "What?" At the same time, the light in front of him gradually dissipated, allowing him to see the scene in front of him clearly, and the outline of the girl became clearer. She was tall and straight, similar to Wang Lu, and Wang Lu's figure was considered above average among men. In addition, the girl was covered in heavy armor, and her whole body was wrapped in shiny steel. Only a few pieces of delicate leather were exposed at the joints. Through the armor, one could vaguely tell that although the girl was not sturdy, she was not weak either, and her body was very healthy and beautiful. The girl's face, like the armor on her body, was cold and firm, a pair of clear eyes like ice that would not melt for 10,000 years, and two slender eyebrows were like sharpened swords, a woman with a heroic spirit. Let me ask you, are you my follower? In Wang Lu's ears, the girl asked again. The tone of the voice was no different from the previous time. Wang Lu thought for a while, and decided to tell the truth. What is a follower? On the biting cold ice, a fine line seemed to open up, and the girl's face showed a shocked expression. You don't know a follower? Who are you? Wang Lu asked, who are you? While asking, Wang Lu also began to look around, and saw that he was in a hall with a dense atmosphere. The four walls were lit with black torches, the light of the fire flickered, and in the deep hall, it was like the stars in the night sky. And under the stone slab under Wang Lu's feet, there was a circular array that emitted a brown light, illuminating the surroundings. The earth elemental spiritual chi in the air was extremely dense, and the pitch-black altar behind him was reflecting light. According to the situation in front of him, this hall should be used for sacrificial rituals. The altar behind him was still stained with a strong smell of blood. Combined with the array under his feet and the experience of appearing in the darkness just now, the most logical deduction was, at this moment, the girl said coldly, I am your master. Pfft, ha 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 ha. Wang Lu immediately burst into laughter. However, before he could stop laughing, he saw the girl silently raise her arm, and the back of her right hand lit up with a red light. Wang Lu suddenly felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on his shoulders. All the bones in his body crackled, and he was about to fall. However, in this sudden attack, Wang Lu's many years of painstaking practice of the non-phase method undoubtedly showed itself. While his bones crackled under the pressure, his right hand pointed down and his non-phase sword chi shot out. The recoil force surged through his whole body, maintaining his standing posture. However, the stone slab beneath his feet couldn't withstand the heavy pressure and shattered with a loud bang. Along with the cracking of the stone slab, the brown array also flickered twice and then completely extinguished. The girl was somewhat surprised to see that even under such heavy pressure, Wang Lu was still able to stand firm in front of her. After a pause, she seriously explained, it seems that it's because the sacrifice is not complete enough, so that you didn't get the complete enlightenment. No matter, I will explain it to you in its entirety. The girl seemed to be deeply shocked by the scene in front of her. She took a deep breath and still maintained her calm tone. You are my summon, a blood spirit follower from the blood temple, and I am the master who summoned you. The relationship between you and me is maintained by a contract. If there is a violation, it will be the result just now. Wang Lu nodded thoughtfully. At this time, the pressure on his body gradually dissipated. However, whenever he wanted to harm the girl, that heavy pressure would follow him like a shadow. It seemed that what the girl said about the contract relationship was indeed true. This was clearly a symptom of being bound by a strong contract. And in 9 regions, this kind of summoning of servants was not uncommon. For example, the so-called celestial soldiers and generals, godly beating technique, bean soldiers, and many other spells were based on the summoning of servants from a certain world. It was just that, as soon as this immortal dreamland appeared, it turned him into a follower and forcibly gave him a master. What was the intention of this? Have you even forgotten the purpose of coming here? The girl shook her head helplessly. Sure enough, I shouldn't have used the incomplete mask to summon the blood spirit. Listen, the only purpose of you coming from the blood temple is to assist me in obtaining the 5 blood spirit crown. Don't tell me you don't even remember the 5 blood spirit crown? Wang Lu said, I don't remember. The so-called 5 blood spirit crown is the most precious treasure in this world. The one who obtains it can be crowned as the king, and no one can disobey him. The girl lightly said, however, this most precious treasure can only be refined by gathering the blood of the 5 spirits, and the blood of the 5 spirits. Is it the life of me and the other 4 blood spirits? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu had a general understanding of the plot of this ring. The principle was nothing more than the same as the method of refining poisonous insect. Summon 5 powerful servants to fight each other, and then the winner would take all and take the crown. What he would face was the other 4 blood spirits and their masters, which was a team fight. The only thing that was not right was the incomplete mask that the girl said. The girl said, to summon the blood spirit from the blood temple, there must be a corresponding tool. Unfortunately, my gray mountain has been passed down for hundreds of generations, and there are only 3 to 5 blood spirit inheritances. Among them, this stone mask is the most valuable, and the blood spirit that may be summoned is also the strongest. However, it was damaged for some reason 100 years ago, so the blood sacrifice has more or less an adverse effect on you, the master of the mask. When you came from the blood temple, the enlightenment that should have been received was not complete, so you don't even know your own identity and the 5 blood spirit crown. The girl said. Although her voice was flat, there was a hint of anxiety in it. Obviously, she was not at ease with the blood spirit before her. According to her prediction, the blood spirit summoned by the stone mask could at least be ranked in the top 3 among the 5 spirits. In this way, she would have the capital to deal with the other 4. Otherwise, with her temper, she would not risk using the broken mask to summon. Unfortunately, the final result was still beyond her control. Could this seemingly amnesiac blood spirit really help her win the 5 blood spirit crown? While she was hesitating, Wang Lu was the first to open his mouth. Tell me about the situation of the other 4. If I want to win the crown, I have to know who my opponent is. The girl said, the other 4 are Golden City, Harmony River, Flaming Valley, and Eternal Tree. How is their strength? Golden City is the strongest. Their city master's cultivation base is through the sky, and he has millions of elite soldiers. Flaming Valley is second, and their strength is about 60 to 70% of Golden City. Harmony River and Eternal Tree are the second, but they are of the same breath and branch. Their joint force is better than Flaming Valley, but they cannot contend against Golden City. And if Golden City wants to target any one of them, it is bound to pay a heavy price, and it is very likely to be the fisherman who benefits from the third. Wang Lu nodded. So that's how it is. This situation is indeed delicate. So what about our Grey Mountain? What is the ranking of our strength? What role can we play in this delicate situation? The girl was silent for a moment, and then calmly said, Grey Mountain was once equally famous as Golden City, tied for first place in this world. However, after hundreds of generations of inheritance, it has declined. Its strength is respectfully last among the 5. Wang Lu let out a ha sound. No harm, no harm. It doesn't matter if the starting point is low, we can start low and walk high. The greater the difficulty, the greater the harvest. It's just, what is the specific strength of Grey Mountain? How is your city master's cultivation compared to the master of Golden City? How many elite soldiers are there in the mountain? The girl said, my cultivation base is at most 1/10 of that of the master of Golden City, and besides me, there are no other usable soldiers in the mountain. Wang Lu's smile suddenly stagnated. No other usable soldiers? How can you be the king of the mountain? Moreover, your combat power is actually only 1/10 of the other? Are you sure we're playing the same game? Upon hearing Wang Lu's question, the girl's expression slightly dimmed, but in the blink of an eye, she cheered up and her eyes became more resolute. It's precisely because of the decline of the 100 generations of inheritance that I want to obtain the 5 blood spirit crown to restore the glory of Grey Mountain. Wang Lu deeply abhorred this kind of illogical slogan. You can't even figure out which came first, no wonder you're reduced to a lone commander. With just your strength, how can you compete with the other 4 forces? Obtain the 5 blood spirit crown? Or do you have the supreme wisdom to ignore all forces, so you can easily play with the other 4 forces in the palm of your hand? Just as the girl was about to open her mouth, Wang Lu immediately said, How about this? Let me ask you a question. What is the 14th power of 1239491273912733? The girl was somewhat caught off guard and froze for a moment. I can't figure it out. Wang Lu sighed even more. This IQ, should I say it's not surprising. Then I only have one last question left. The girl nodded. Please go ahead. Excuse me, how do I get to Golden City? What? Wang Lu explained, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. I'm ready to abandon the dark and seek the light. The girl didn't seem to expect that Wang Lu would actually say such treasonous words. She was stunned for a cup of tea time before she came back to her senses under Wang Lu's call. I won't let it go. Calmly, the girl expressed her stance. I must obtain the 5 blood spirits crown. Wang Lu also sighed. Okay, wait until I help the master of Golden City get the crown, then I'll lend it to you to play with for a moment. Seeing that Wang Lu seemed to have made up his mind to leave, the girl pondered for a moment, and then once again raised her arm, releasing a red light. I said, I will not let go. In an instant, Wang Lu felt that the pressure on his body had increased thousands of times. Even if his non-phase method was the best at defense, he still couldn't support it. In this regard, Wang Lu had to say, Girl, why bother? Meeting each other is fate. For us to meet here, whether it's good or bad, it's all fate. Why bother to embarrass me, a patient with amnesia? Are you happy to see me die in the hands of others and become the nourishment for the 5 blood spirit crown? Upon hearing this remark, the girl was slightly shaken, but she soon became firm. I'm sorry, but this is the only chance for the revival of Grey Mountain. My time is running out, so I can't wait any longer. Therefore, I must get your cooperation. You can still resist under the suppression of my 2 commands, so I'm afraid your strength is the strongest among the 5 blood spirits. If you and I join hands, we might have a chance to win. At that time, I will only take a small part of it, and the rest will be yours. So, why do you want to go to Golden City and become a surrendered soldier? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was somewhat moved. Especially the word surrendered soldier, he really couldn't pretend that he didn't know about it. Very well, I'll play with you. Starting from scratch is also fun. Really? In an instant, the snow on the girl's face melted, and a wisp of smile uncontrollably hung on her face. I am Lon, the master of Grey Mountain. I will definitely win the crown with you, definitely. Chapter 398. Lan's determination was indeed commendable. It could be seen that this heavily armored girl, in addition to her determination, also had the courage to carry it out. Her freezing cold murderous intent showed that she had experienced the test of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, and was by no means a person who could only talk big. In other words, now that Grey Mountain had withered, she was the only one left, but she alone was able to prop up Grey Mountain, which meant that her strength could not be underestimated. However, even if more positive factors were considered, Wang Lu did not think that his situation could improve a bit. Among the 5 forces, Grey Mountain was the weakest, so weak that it could be destroyed at any time. Even Lan herself said that it was the other 4 forces that could form a delicate situation that no one dared to make a move at will. Only Golden City, Eternal Tree, and the other 2 forces could keep each other in check. As for Grey Mountain, it could really be trampled to death at any time. It was not even qualified to be an equal force in the competition. Therefore, when he heard Lan sincerely expressed her determination to win the crown together with him, Wang Lu wanted to ask, based on what? Based on the number of people that Grey Mountain could count with his 2 fingers? Or based on your IQ that can't even calculate the 14th root of a 16-digit number? Confidence alone could not solve any problem. In this game with 0 starting point, no doubt the sense of achievement would be far better than the normal situation, but the difficulty of victory was needless to say. In Wang Lu's view, the biggest and only chance in this game was that the other 4 forces were just puppets of the immortal dreamland, while he was the protagonist of this dreamland. When it came to the protagonist, it was not surprising to have a down-and-out opening. In the legendary story, all the powerful sages who had their marriage annulled at the beginning and were slapped in the face, all of them happily turned the tables and achieved an amazing feat. This was the protagonist's treatment. Of course, in this immortal dreamland, relying on the protagonist's halo to overcome everything was a moronic behavior. The so-called protagonist's treatment, in Wang Lu's view, only had one key point: the immortal dreamland would not deliberately create a deadly environment for the protagonist. The immortal dreamland might trap anyone, but it would not trap the protagonist. Although the current situation was desperate, in the future, there would certainly be a turning point. Otherwise, if the most powerful force, Golden City, couldn't think straight and launched an all-out attack on Grey Mountain, this game would be over. But even so, in such a dangerous situation, if he wanted to turn the tables step by step, he had to be extra careful. He couldn't make a single mistake. For the current Wang Lu, the first step he had to take was to seize his authority as a leader from Lan. This was the key to everything, and the biggest difficulty of this game was actually this. Wang Lu was used to leading a team to create miracles, but he had never experienced being led by someone else. This was because he had always believed in one thing: an incompetent general would tire the army to death. He would rather fight alone than have an incompetent leader above him. Perhaps Lan was not an incurably stupid person. Not being able to calculate a 16-digit number was not a sin that could not be redeemed by death. But compared to this grim game, Hayes indeed didn't have the ability to lead them to victory. Lan, if you really want to win, then promise me one thing. Lan nodded her head. Please say it. Throw away your master identity, become my follower, and follow my leadership with ease. In your dreams. Lan did not hesitate to reject Wang Lu's proposal, and there was an obvious unpleasant expression on her face. Wang Lu was not surprised by this. How could there be a leader in this world who was willing to obediently throw away his authority? Regarding Lan's unpleasant expression, Wang Lu just sneered and asked, "Do you think with your ability, it's possible for you to win the 5 blood spirit crown? Right now, your only hope is me. Whether it's force or intelligence, only I have the qualification to be the leader." Lan was silent for a moment, and then said, "Yes, perhaps your intelligence and force are above me, but I can't just hand over the leadership to someone else. In view of your previous behavior, I can't completely trust you. Who knows if you will surrender to other forces or not? Therefore, if you think your ability is higher than mine, and if you have any good strategy, you can honestly put it out. I will seriously consider adopting it." Wang Lu interrupted, "Yes, this is indeed the safe way, but do you think you have the qualification to choose the safe way? Right now, in this 5-party power struggle, Grey Mountain is already at an absolute disadvantage. In this case, only by recklessly gambling can we grab a chance. Seeking stability? That's the privilege of Golden City." Lan deeply frowned and said nothing. "At present, there are only you and me in Grey Mountain. Do you still want to add internal friction in this situation? Interesting, I now understand why Grey Mountain could fall to this point from its former reputation of being on par with Golden City." The girl was still silent. She just kept staring at Wang Lu with her pair of clear eyes. Only when the latter began to consider the fee did she gently open her cherry lips. "Very well, as you said, from now on, our master-servant relationship is terminated, and I will seriously listen to your instructions as long as it helps us win the 5 blood spirit crown." The girl's decisiveness was beyond the expectation of Wang Lu. He thought that it would take some effort to persuade Lan to give up the master-servant contract, but unexpectedly, after the girl made her decision, she didn't hesitate at all. And as she declared the termination of the master-servant relationship, on the back of the girl's right hand, a red light flashed and then quickly dispersed. At the same time, Wang Lu felt that the invisible binding force on his body also disappeared. The girl was serious in her work, not a delaying tactic. Wang Lu quite appreciated this. With a decisive teammate, at least he didn't have to worry that when he needed her, she would hesitate for all kinds of bullshit reasons and waste a good opportunity. Moreover, once this kind of person made a decision, it would not be easy to change it. Thus, Wang Lu didn't need to spend his mind on internal strife and could really free his hands to deal with the enemy. Originally, he thought that he would have to go through a lot of twists and turns, but now that he had passed this critical juncture, Wang Lu wanted to say something, but when he remembered that the back of the girl's hand flashed several times, he didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling. So, what was that on the back of your hand? Lon explained seriously, it's a blood charm obtained from performing a blood sacrifice summoning. It can be used to control and strengthen the summoned blood spirit. Wait, what did you say about control and what? Strengthen, Lon explained. Every summoner receives a different number of blood charms according to the blood sacrifice ritual. The blood charm is used to forcibly control the blood spirit, and if this control is used properly, it can strengthen the summoner. For example, I can use a blood charm to force you to listen to my instructions, and I can also use it to order you to do something that you can't normally do. Wang Lu immediately understood the use of the blood charm, but after understanding it, he was even more shocked. This is clearly a treasure that can be used at a critical moment to turn the tables. You actually used to suppress me? Lan's expression was calm and even seemed to be in the right. As you said, when there are only two of us, we can't have any internal friction, and an uncontrollable servant is not acceptable. So in order to reduce internal friction, you didn't hesitate to use 2 precious blood charms? How is this different from setting up an office to eliminate redundant staff in a governing organization? No wonder you're reduced to a commander without an army. By the way, how many blood charms do you have? Lon said, after the blood sacrifice of the remaining dozens of soldiers on Grey Mountain, I obtained 5 blood charms. 2 of them were used to suppress your mutation, so there are 3 more? No, in order to completely remove our master-servant relationship, I scattered the remaining 3. Scattered. Wang Lu couldn't believe his ears. He widened his eyes and looked the girl up and down, trying to find evidence that she was not mentally retarded. Yes. Lon stared back at him confidently. Didn't you persuade me to throw away my identity as the master and listen to your instructions? After weighing the pros and cons, I decided to believe you. Are you going to blame me for this? Wang Lu was silent for a long time. It took him a lot of effort to convince himself not to care too much about a mentally retarded person. In any case, the current situation was already bad enough. There was no need to worry about the loss of a few blood talismans when there were too many lice to bite and too many debts to worry about. So, what are we going to do next, Earth Spirit? Earth Spirit, what a good name. Wang Lu shook his head and then said, the first thing is to leave this place as soon as possible. Although there are still many doubts about this 5 blood spirit crown power struggle, but from common sense, I'm afraid someone will soon come to our door, and it's not suitable for us to immediately fight with the other 4 sides. Lon asked, come to our door? Of course. Golden City, Eternal Tree, Harmony River, and Flaming Valley, these 4 sides check and balance each other, so I'm afraid no one will easily make the first move. However, it's different to deal with Grey Mountain. Given the disparity in strength, we're simply a piece of dessert. As long as they can swallow me, the Earth Spirit, before the other 3, they will have a bit more initiative in the confrontation. If it were me, I would also come to harvest as soon as possible. Lon thought for a moment, nodded to show her understanding, and then asked, so where are we going? As she spoke, she didn't seem to be reluctant to leave Grey Mountain. During the competition for the Blood Crown, we shouldn't have the ability to sense each other's position, right? Lon said, at least I don't. Very good, I don't have it either, so let's assume that the others don't have it either. For a two-person team like us, having fewer people is both a disadvantage and an advantage, because it's easy to hide. As long as we can hide, it's impossible for the other four to not fight for a lifetime. When they fight, we'll have the opportunity to reap the benefits. Lon nodded in agreement. However, at the same time, a strange and slightly frivolous voice came from outside the hall. Reap the benefits? That's not good, right? At the entrance of the hall, a tall figure, carrying a huge spear on his back, slowly walked in. Although his pace was light, the gloomy murderous aura was like a substance, which extinguished the torches in the hall one by one. Chapter 399. It's really dilapidated. The man with the spear sighed with emotion as he walked. He carried the huge spear on his shoulder, which from time to time brushed against the wall, leaving behind sparks and harsh sounds. He broke into the headquarters of Grey Mountain alone, but he seemed to be strolling leisurely in the courtyard. His cold murderous aura caused the temperature in the hall to drop to the freezing point. Even the torches were extinguished one by one, as if he was awed and subdued. In the past, Grey Mountain and Golden City were equally famous. Who in this world didn't yearn for it? However, after 100 generations, the descendants of common people Great Emperor actually fell to the point of reaping the benefits of others. It's really sad, so sad that it makes people despise it. As he spoke, the man finally walked forward and revealed his true appearance under the dim light. A man like a cheetah. Although his body didn't seem very strong, every inch of his muscles and bones contained infinite power. His blood and chi were like surging tides, surging with power. Wang Lu had no doubt that as long as he swung the spear in his hand with all his strength, he could pierce a mountain. This was a warrior who had tempered his body to the extreme. Although for cultivators, the strength of the body was only part of the strength, no one could underestimate a warrior who purely tempered his body. Seeing the appearance of this man, Lan's whole body tensed up. As if facing a great enemy, she put a dark heavy shield in front of her, and beads of sweat glistened on her forehead. Seeing this, the man with the spear just sneered. And, in Wang Lu's view, Lan's strength was not too weak, but compared with the man with the spear in front of him, she was indeed like an ant. Once the fight started, even though Lan was fully armed, and the heavy armor on her body was no small matter, the man with the spear could still poke a hole through it. The man with the spear sneered a few times, then pointed the spear in his hand at the shield. The ancestors of Grey Mountain have done a favor to my Harmony River, so I really can't bear to see their descendants tarnish their name. Today, I will destroy your Grey Mountain, so that the ancestors won't be ashamed of you. As for you, Earth Element Blood Spirit, if you want to blame something, blame your bad luck for actually following such a useless master. Before he finished speaking, Wang Lu felt a sharp light flash past his eyes. The huge spear was like a spirit snake, and in the blink of an eye, it had pierced into his chest. Just now, the gunman clearly focused all of his energy on Lan, but when he made his move, he went for Wang Lu first, which was really unexpected. Lan held the heavy shield and was on full alert, afraid that if she showed the slightest flaw, she would be shot down. She was confident that her strength was far inferior to her opponent's, but with the help of the heavy shield and armor, she should be able to hold on for a while. If she had joined forces with the Earth Blood Spirit, she might have been able to contend against it. But who would have thought that it would abandon her and go straight for the Earth Blood Spirit? She was so shocked that she couldn't react in time. She could only watch as the demonic spear, which had drunk the blood of countless heroes, stabbed towards Wang Lu. It's over. The opponent's demonic spear was so sharp that in this world, except for the master of Golden City, perhaps no one could face it head-on. Moreover, when she summoned the blood spirit, she specifically prayed for a stalwart man, or a man with fiery and thunder-like attack. Only by combining this with her offense and defense could they have the possibility of going against the heaven. And a blood spirit that was good at offense but bad at defense, facing the thunder-like demonic spear, wouldn't it be? However, just as she thought of this, she heard a deafening explosion sweeping over, and then a violent airflow wreaked havoc in the main hall. She held the heavy shield in her hand, but she actually felt a little unsteady on her feet. However, through the violent airflow, Lan vaguely saw that Wang Lu was holding his sword horizontally in front of him, standing tall. Good swordsmanship. Amidst the frenzy, the gunman's praise could be clearly heard. To be able to block my spear at such a close distance is worthy of praise. But how long can you hold on? With that, the gunman took a step back, but it was a retreat in order to advance. The killing intent emitted from his body was even more intense. Obviously, he was preparing an unprecedented attack. Lan knew that if the opposite party went all out, perhaps she wouldn't even be able to hold on. However, she took this opportunity to take 2 steps forward, ready to stand in front of Wang Lu. Regarding this righteous act, Wang Lu frowned. Using his non-phase sword defense, he blocked Lan outside. Don't get in the way. Ha ha ha, good, good, good. You, this earth spirit, are actually a bit interesting, very much to my liking. If you can withstand my next move, after I kill that little girl and take away her blood mark, I will take you as my subordinate and let you fight with me. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was surprised. Turns out you're not a water element blood spirit, but the master of Harmony River. However, before his voice fell, the gunman, with a thunderous momentum, fiercely burst out his accumulated energy. The lightning-like spear, in a split second, split into thousands of light beams. The light flashed so brightly that people couldn't open their eyes. Then, the light beams converged into a torrential wave, which submerged Wang Lu in it. Obviously, it was a sharp and straight spear, but when it moved, it carried a strong water element spiritual energy, a combination of hardness and softness. Even if the opponent could withstand the first round of wind and thunder, he would still be submerged in the suffocating wave. However, as soon as Wang Lu pointed the sword of Mount Kuan forward, the billowing waves immediately collapsed as if they hit a reef. And no matter how hard the gunman tried to make the spear's momentum more difficult to defend, he was still unable to push the sword of Mount Kuan back even a little bit. For him, this was really a new experience. Powerful, really powerful. A powerful swordsman like you is rare in this world. In the billowing wave, the gunman's voice became more and more excited. Then take my last move. The gunman shouted, and then withdrew the spear to his back. In an instant, the billowing wave that filled the hall disappeared without a trace. Only the tens of thousands of messy stab marks on the ground showed how fierce the attack and defense just now was. However, although the spear was withdrawn, it was for a stronger attack. This time, there was no longer an endless tide, but only a killing blow that concentrated all the power of the gunman. As the saying goes, dripping water can penetrate a stone. Even the softest thing, after years of penetration, is still unparalleled. And this gunman, who was born in Harmony River, wanted to penetrate tens of thousands of years in an instant, completely bursting out the power of the millions of years of water strike. Water is soft, but also hard. He would definitely let this defensive swordsman understand this truth. However, just before he was ready to burst out with all his strength, a clear ice mirror suddenly blocked in front of him. The dense cold air made him tremble all over, and the killing blow that was originally ready to be launched could not be stabbed out, and was forcibly pulled back. What are you doing? Being interfered with, the anger of the gunman was self-evident. He turned around and pointed the spear behind him. Outside the hall, a girl in a blue dress strode in. Her momentum was menacing, and she faced the spear that was enough to stir up a storm without any fear. Why are you asking me? I am saving your life, do you know that? Saving my life? Are you kidding me? Just now, I completely occupied the advantage on the field, and the opponent couldn't move, you. Go play on the side. However, the girl did not listen to his explanation. She stretched out her hand and directly swatted the spear to the side, and then passed the gunman and walked to the front of Wang Lu. Her pretty and lively face was 70% puzzled and 30% dissatisfied. How come it's you? The girl put her hands on her waist, making her waist more slender and graceful, but her face was depressed and irritated. Wang Lu tilted his head and thought for a moment. I also want to ask you, this is obviously my immortal dreamland. Why did you come here to join in the fun, senior sister Zhou? This girl who suddenly came was the lead disciple of Kunlun sect, Zhou Mumu, who had just bid farewell to Wang Lu outside the group of immortal tombs not long ago. What, your immortal dreamland? Zhou Mumu was somewhat annoyed. It's obviously mine, okay. It was not easy for me to persuade the elders to let me fight one-on-one, but I actually met you, a loser. Wang Lu was immediately unhappy. What do you mean I'm a loser? Zhou Mumu said, if it were you, and someone suddenly broke in while you were bathing and changing clothes, would you call him a noble person? Hey, how are you bathing and changing clothes right now? I'm going solo in the immortal dreamland, okay? It's very private, okay? Moreover, I thought I could easily win this time, but now that I met you, a loser, how could I win? This exchange of words left Wang Lu speechless. While the two were quarreling, the gunman also came over and asked, do you two know each other? Zhou Mumu peevishly glared at him. If I don't know him, how could I save you in time? Do you know that if you really thrust your spear just now, he could immediately use his non-phase nameless sword to return it, which would make you deader than dead? The gunman still shrugged his shoulders disapprovingly. Apparently, he didn't believe that not only could someone receive his full strength blow, he could even bounce it back. But, since you two know each other, that's good. Tell him to surrender to me, let's fight against Golden City together. This gray mountain has fallen so much that it's not worthy of such an excellent swordsman. Although his determined strike was stopped by someone, and he couldn't enjoy it to his heart's content, this gunman had been deeply impressed by Wang Lu's non-phase sword and wholeheartedly wanted to win him over. With that, the gunman also smiled at Wang Lu. How about it? Do you want to join me? Just now, my two moves are not bad, right? At least, they're much better than your current master. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu just smiled, walked to Lan's side, and then reached out to pat her head. My family's girl is indeed good for nothing. I've troubled you over and over again. Unfortunately, as her master, I can't abandon her just because she's good for nothing. That gunman was immediately stunned. Master, you? Then his eyes turned to Lan, and he looked even more surprised. Wait a minute, what about your blood marks? Don't tell me. After gawking for a moment, the gunman laughed. You actually squandered all your blood marks. And then a blood spirit turned the situation around? Although I've long guessed that the people of Grey Mountain are good for nothing, you're still far beyond my imagination. Enough. Before the gunman's laughter ended, Zhou Mumu slapped his head. You talk as if you're so great. If you have the ability, then use your blood marks to show off your master's authority. The gunman smiled and shrugged, but there was a bit of helplessness in his smile. Obviously, his relationship with Zhou Mumu was not as simple as master and servant. But, Wang Lu, are you really not going to consider joining hands? Based on this momentum, I think there's no need to guess who the other three followers are. The situation is not optimistic. Although there's only one winner in the end, isn't it better to be the second last to leave than to leave as soon as you come up? Wang Lu sighed. I say, instead of thinking about joining hands or not, it's better to think about this problem. With that, Wang Lu pointed his finger at the sky. How are we going to survive under the full firepower of Golden City? Outside the hall, in the sky, on the peak of Grey Mountain that towered into the clouds, thousands of golden lights shone continuously, like a golden cloud that shrouded the mountain. Chapter 400. Golden City. The golden cloud above Grey Mountain was mighty and mighty, like a celestial army that pressured in all directions. The boiling golden light was dazzling, blotting out the sky and making everyone present hold their breath. Golden City, Zhou Mumu's eyebrows were tangled, showing a bit of irritation and uneasiness. This kind of battle formation, no matter how I look at it, it's like that group of nouveau riche from Xingjing sect. TSK, their action is really fast. The master of Harmony River nodded again and again and exclaimed, "Amazing, really amazing. I single-handedly went down Harmony River to be the first to arrive. This time, Golden City has mobilized at least 100 gold-clad celestial soldiers, yet they are not a bit slower than me. This mobilization ability is really amazing." Zhou Mumu slapped him. "If you have the time to sigh at other people's fierceness, why don't you think about the current solution? You single-handedly killed your way here, but now that you're surrounded like a dumpling, I want to see how you're going to jump. Damn, this gray mountain has fallen for hundreds of generations, and now there's only a weak little girl in charge of it. Don't tell me I don't have to single-handedly lead an army to fight? Do I still have any face? You want face, but you don't want your life." The master of Harmony River touched his chin. "Who let me be so handsome?" Zhou Mumu could not bear it anymore. She pulled out her diamond ring and smashed him to the ground. When the master and follower of Harmony River once again quarreled, Wang Lu had already walked out of the hall with a gloomy face and bathed in golden light. This was the first time he truly felt the strength of the most powerful force in this world, Golden City. The golden cloud above his head, in terms of power alone, did not surpass the level of King Pill. However, there was a world of difference between King Pill and King Pill. The weaker King Pill, Wang Lu could crush it with one finger, but the stronger King Pill, such as Qianghua, Wang Lu did not have much certainty in winning. As for his master's number 1 King Pill in 9 regions, there was no need to even mention it. In the golden cloud above his head, regardless of the low-level soldiers, there were more than 100 gold-clad celestial soldiers, and none of these celestial soldiers was weak, at least not weaker than the master of Grey Mountain, Lan. This gathering of 100 people was no small matter. But what really made Wang Lu frown was the commander hidden above these gold-clad celestial soldiers. The strength or weakness of the commander directly determined the threat of these golden-clad celestial soldiers. If it was a general miscellaneous fish commander, Wang Lu alone could kill these more than 100 golden-clad celestial soldiers and 100 times more servant soldiers. Nanfei's sword was very good at restraining those tactics that relied on quantity to win. However, right now, just by looking at the overwhelming irresistible power above their heads, they knew that behind these celestial soldiers, there was a capable person helping them. Thus, the situation of this round was very ugly. The moment he saw Zhou Mumu, Wang Lu guessed that the followers of the other 3 sects were likely to be the lead disciples of Xingjing sect, Royal Soldier sect, and 10,000 Art sect. This was really bad news, because Wang Lu's biggest card to pass this test had disappeared. He was assigned to Grey Mountain, the weakest force, which, from the beginning, had an irreparable gap with the other 4 forces. And considering that after the beginning, the other 4 forces would certainly try to swallow up Grey Mountain, this was simply a dead end. In Wang Lu's view, the protagonist treatment was the only guarantee to avoid certain death at the beginning. However, with the appearance of Zhou Mumu, this card was tragically overturned. Because compared to the other 4 lead disciples, even if he had the privilege of opening the group of immortal tombs, he was still far from the protagonist level. If there was no one behind Golden City, Wang Lu might be able to deal with it. However, as long as the other side was any of the lead disciples of the 5 uniques, this would be an unprecedented and arduous battle. How could the lead disciples of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League be ordinary people? Any one of them was not simple. Previously, Wang Lu had dealt with Zhang Zai and Zhou Mumu. Although at that time each of them had some advantages, Wang Lu also recognized that the other party was absolutely on the same level as him. Along with the advancement of their cultivation base, at different times, there was no such thing as an absolute advantage. But now, if these people occupied the geographical position of Golden City, it would be difficult for him to make a comeback. However, just as Wang Lu was hesitating, he suddenly heard a voice mixed with surprise and anger in the sky. "Wang Lu, it's you." This voice was really familiar. Wang Lu remembered that not long ago, outside the group of immortal tombs, he had a conversation with the owner of the voice. The worst expectation really came true. Wang Lu somewhat helplessly shrugged and then waved at the golden cloud in the sky. Yo, Sister Wang Yue, I trust you've been well since we last met. Ha ha ha. I never thought you would have such a day. Above the golden cloud, Wang Yu wildly laughed. Among the 5 spirits, the earth spirit's situation is the worst. There is almost no chance of survival. I was curious about which lead disciple unfortunately became the earth spirit, but unexpectedly, it's you. It's actually you. Listening to this unreserved laughter, Wang Lu could not help but wrinkle his brows. He inwardly thought that in the ancient sword tomb, did he really play too hard and turn this woman into this flesh-like collapsed face? However, since it was her, things were a bit easier to handle. Wang Yu, this woman indeed had some ability. After not seeing her for several years, her cultivation base had greatly advanced. Right now, she was already peak shoot on stage, and at any time, she could cross the king pill bottleneck. Speaking of which, her cultivation base was a bit ahead of Wang Lu. However, compared to Qianghua, it was like comparing a firefly to the bright moon. This time, Qianghua didn't personally come out, but instead sent Wang Yu. Most likely, it was because she didn't want to take the risk of putting too much power on Grey Mountain. After all, Golden City was the #1 city in this world. While enjoying the convenience, it also had to face the unanimous targeting of the other 4 forces. If they were a bit careless, they would be overturned by the other 4 forces, and the gain would not make up for the loss. This cautiousness gave Wang Lu a chance. He could not deal with Qianghua, who led the army of Golden City, but he might not necessarily be unable to deal with Wang Yu, who led the army of Golden City. Right now, the only problem was whether the rear was stable when he went all out to meet the enemy. What was the position of the master and follower of Harmony River? No matter how confident Wang Lu was, he didn't think he could face the joint forces of the 2 forces. And it was really difficult to fathom the intention of the madmen of Harmony River. However, while Wang Lu was hesitating, he heard a burst of cursing from the hall behind him. Are those bastards of Golden City here to take advantage of us? Bullying the few with many, really King shameless. Before he could finish, Zhou Mumu's diamond ring once again swung at his head. I don't like to hear you say dirty words. You hit me again. Zhou Mumu ignored the angry glare of the gunman, but instead looked up at the sky and sneered. Xingjing sect people are really awe-inspiring. An inner court disciple also put out such a lineup. If other people didn't know, they would think that you're the lead disciple of Xingjing sect. Seeing Zhou Mumu, Wang Yu was suddenly startled and somewhat at a loss on the golden cloud. When senior sister Qianghua sent her here, she didn't say that she would face 2 lead disciples. When she faced Wang Lu, even though she knew that she was far inferior to the other party in all aspects, anger could give her endless courage. However, facing Zhou Mumu, the title of the lead disciple of Kunlun sect really shocked her. However, at this time, a general wearing a fiery jade gold helmet beside her said, Madam Jean Ling, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If we can wipe out the 2 masters and followers of the 5 spirits in one fell swoop, our Golden City will immediately win. Even if the Earth Spirit and the Fire Spirit join forces, they are no longer our opponent. This is a great merit. Wang Yu asked, with our manpower, do we have 100% certainty? I dare not say. After all, the opponent is the King of Harmony River. In terms of strength alone, I'm afraid they are not under any leader. However, they are, after all, alone. Our heavenly army has 108 heavenly soldiers, 12 heavenly generals, and you, a gold spirit, keeping watch. Logically speaking, our strength is far above the opponent. The persuasion of the heavenly general finally made Wang Yu make up her mind. Very well, then, just as Wang Yu was ready to order the entire army to attack, suddenly an unprecedented strong sense of crisis welled up in her heart. As an inner court disciple of Xingjing sect, even though there was a world of difference between Wang Yu and the lead disciple, her basic skill as a cultivator was still very solid. Not good, quickly retreat." "What?" The heavenly general next to her could not believe his ears. Just now, with great difficulty, he persuaded this gold spirit to order the attack, but in the blink of an eye, she actually wanted to retreat? And with this hesitation, the last opportunity quietly slipped away. From the main hall of Grey Mountain, a man with a spear strode out, seething with anger. A group of shameless eyesore scum, taking advantage of the duel between two sides, despicably launched a sneak attack. Moreover, they even bullied the few, and even caused me to be beaten by my followers. Today, I want you to pay the price. All of you pay the price." The more the King of Harmony River spoke, the angrier he became. His anger seemed to condense on the spear in his hand. The surface of the water element spear surged up like a huge wave in the deep sea, and also like the rolling lava of a volcano. The two completely different forces of water and fire gathered together, brewing a terrifying and matchless eruption. "Scum of Golden City, get out of here!" With a roar, a bolt of lightning pierced the sky from the ground. The King of Harmony River threw the spear into the sky. The lightning pierced through the golden cloud, and the array formed by the golden-clad army could not withstand it. In just one strike, it was suddenly pierced through. In a split second, more than half of the 108 heavenly soldiers were seriously injured and vomited blood. Several of them suffered a backlash that was too heavy and immediately died, falling down. The 12 heavenly generals were shocked. Blood-marked divine spear, this madman actually used the blood-marked divine spear. Before their exclamation fell, they saw the King of Harmony River beckoned in the air, and the spear that flew out from his hand appeared in his palm. Then, a red light lit up on the back of his hand, causing the spear body to once again surge with the power of raging waves and lava. "Run! All troops, retreat, immediately!" This time, without needing Wanyu to say anything, the heavenly generals acted on their own and immediately led their men to flee. The golden cloud in the sky suddenly turned into countless threads of light and scattered in all directions. This was because they were afraid that the King of Harmony River would go crazy and chase after them. With just one spear, the morale of the golden-clad army of Golden City that originally had the upper hand collapsed. The power of this blood-marked divine spear could be clearly seen. Even Wang Lu also stared at it for a long time. Holding the sword of Mount Kuan in his hand, he chuckled and praised, "Eye-opener, really eye-opener." Upon hearing Wang Lu's words, the King of Harmony River was so happy that he danced with joy. "Ha ha, you have good eyesight. You're indeed worthy to be the man I like. Just now, when I defeated the enemy with one strike, wasn't I particularly handsome?" Before he could finish, a diamond ring smashed into his face. "Are you crazy? You actually used such a precious blood mark. Are you trying to show off how many blood marks you have?" The King of Harmony River crawled up from the ground, wiped away the blood from his nose, and then smiled brightly. "I look at foreign things as if they are muck, isn't that also very handsome? I will disfigure you today." Chapter 401. What do you think? This is the famous Harmony River in this world. Although it's named after a river, it's magnificent and majestic, which is very suitable for me. On the bank of Harmony River, a group of 4 people walked and talked. Not long after repelling Golden City, Wang Lu decided to give up Grey Mountain and form an alliance with Harmony River. In this regard, the master and his follower of Harmony River were happy to see this. Although in the 5 blood spirit power struggle, the relationship between them was, after all, a competitive relationship, but when Xingjing's sect was so powerful, the alliance was imperative. The man with the spear walked in the front, and along the way, his mouth never stopped talking. In this world, in terms of strength, Golden City is the leader, Flaming Valley is the second, and Harmony River and Eternal Tree are the last. However, we have always been like one. This Harmony River flows out from the void in the sky and eventually flows to the Eternal Tree. Half of the river water pours into the endless abyss behind the tree, forming the famous Harmony River waterfall. The other half is absorbed by the Eternal Tree, which is its source of life. And the eternal tree's roots stretch out, stabilizing the foundation of Harmony River and nourishing the creatures. The relationship between our two families is like that of husband and wife. If the two families join hands, even Golden City would have to think twice. Especially since the spear in my hand is invincible, even the master of Golden City would not dare to face it head-on. So far, you are the only one who can withstand my raging waves. Therefore, I am very optimistic about you. If you and I join hands, in this 5-spirit power struggle, we can run amok. Putting aside the King of Harmony River's flaunting of his own force, this remark actually pointed out an important issue. The relationship between Harmony River and the Eternal Tree was far closer than what Lon previously said. Of course, one side of the story could not be completely believed. As they walked, Wang Lu asked, "Now that the situation of the 5-spirit power struggle is delicate, are you sure the Eternal Tree will not be disloyal?" Who knew that upon hearing this, the other party just laughed. Disloyal? Brother, you think too much. In this world, anyone can betray me, but the Eternal Tree absolutely will not. Wang Lu smiled and declined to comment. The King of Harmony River was indeed first class when it came to military bravery, but as a leader, he had too many unqualified qualities. This kind of thing related to political wisdom, it was better to pretend that he didn't hear it. While they were talking, the group had already arrived at the core of Harmony River. They saw a bustling city on both sides of the river. Hundreds of barges were competing with each other on the river, and the city was bustling with traffic. What was even more amazing was that there was also a magnificent city in the middle of Harmony River. The people living in the city were humanoid creatures with gills on their cheeks. Looking at their clothes, the level of civilization here was not inferior to the city on the river. This is the essence of my Harmony River. Although it is not as prosperous as Golden City or magnificent as Flaming Valley, it is full of vitality and has a limitless future. Now that you have abandoned Grey Mountain, you might as well camp here so that you can appreciate my elegant demeanor from a close distance and surrender to me as soon as possible. Wang Lu pretended that he didn't hear anything and focused on the scenery on both sides of the Harmony River. Although this was only a part of the immortal dreamland, the design of this place was exceptionally fine. The 3 cities were located in 3 different places, but they were connected with each other. Whether it was the layout of the city or the residence, they were not crude decorations, but living people, living cities. It was hard for Wang Lu to imagine that this was a temporary city built to give cultivators a test. Perhaps this was the same as Peach Blossom Village, a reenactment of some historical situation, which was why it was so exquisite and lifelike. It was just that. While he was thinking, he suddenly heard a burst of cheers. Wang Lu took a closer look and saw that his group of people had been seen by the people of Harmony River. The people in the city were crazily cheering and waving. "A Yi, it's a Yi. A Yi, come on. Come on. You can definitely win the 5 Blood Spirit crown, we all support you, a Yi." There were even some bold girls who enthusiastically confessed, "A Yi, we love you. You're the most handsome." Hearing this cheer, the King of Harmony River beamed with joy as he waved his spear and shouted, "I love you too. I love your vision." Wang Lu was dumbfounded. "A Yi? Hee, it's my nickname." The King of Harmony River named a Yi nodded without any shyness and admitted, "Although it's a bit strange to be called by a nickname when I'm already so big, but since this name is also quite handsome, I don't care about it." Wang Lu was curious about another issue. "You're the King of Harmony River, but you're really approachable with your people." A Yi laughed and said, "I can't help it. Although some people have advised me to maintain the majesty of a king, everyone has watched me grow up, so I really can't be majestic. Moreover, I don't think there's anything handsome about being aloof and aloof. It's more fun to play with everyone like this." As soon as he finished speaking, A Ye's eyes lit up. It was an exceptionally beautiful girl in the city. She looked at him and covered her mouth with a faint smile. Between her eyebrows, there was a faint hint of a young girl's amorous feelings. A Yi immediately blew a whistle. With his powerful cultivation base, this whistle was enough to wake up half of the city. The girl was taken aback, but she couldn't help but shyly turn away. At the same time, many of the girls who had just cheered for a Yi and loudly professed their love immediately changed sides and began to try to throw eggs, tomatoes, and other things at him. A Yi laughed and didn't care. Hee hee, it's still comfortable to be home. While speaking, a Yi stopped in front of an exquisite mansion. We're home, come in and sit down. Wang Lu was surprised to see the small house in front of him. Although it was exquisite, its size was completely unworthy of the identity of a king. He asked, "Is this your palace?" A Yi shook his head and pointed to the distance. "The palace is over there, but I've always been too lazy to go there. Although it's a bit small, it's comfortable to live here. There aren't so many noisy people who want me to do this and that. Palace etiquette and state affairs, everywhere is uncomfortable. Moreover, it's clear that I'm the king and they're my subjects, but none of them are willing to listen to me. No matter what I say, they're always against me. I saw that some people live a hard life, so I said that we should simply exempt the taxes of Harmony River and then sell the palace to everyone to divide the money." They were so anxious that their faces turned red, so stingy. Wang Lu really felt sad for those ministers of Harmony River. "In short, this is my territory. I think there's no better place in this world than here, so don't think too much about it. Just quickly surrender. In any case, your Grey Mountain has already lost its home." Wang Lu smiled but didn't say anything. "Oh, are you worried about her?" A Yi pointed at Zhou Mumu. "Indeed, I already have a blood spirit." Before he could finish, Zhou Mumu's shapely eyebrows raised. "You said one." A Yi ignored her and continued, "But I think you're more pleasing to the eye than her, so as long as you're willing to follow me, I'll immediately kick this woman away. I guarantee that in the end, no one will compete with you for the 5 blood spirit crown. How about it?" Regarding a Ye's warm invitation, Wang Lu couldn't help but sigh with emotion. This A Yi was born in Harmony River. Sure enough, water entered his head when he was a child, and he dared to say anything. As for whether to accept his invitation or not, this was not a problem at all, because before Wang Lu could answer, someone else had already answered for him. "Kick me away? You really dare to say that, and in front of me?" Zhou Mumu's diamond ring smashed at him without any trace of politeness. A Yi resisted with the spear in his hand and argued, "You, this woman, are fierce and stupid. You hit me every day. If I don't kick you, who else should I kick? I was really blind to recruit a trash like you to be my blood spirit. Damn, you're rebelling." Seeing that the two sides were about to fight again, Wang Lu coughed and said, "A Yi, I have a question to ask you." A Yi immediately broke away from the fight. "Go ahead." Upon seeing this, Zhou Mumu somewhat reluctantly put away her diamond ring and waited for Wang Lu to speak. In her mind, Wang Lu's magical performance in the ancient sword tomb had left a deep impression on her. In terms of immortal cultivation, Zhou Mumu was confident that she was not inferior to anyone. However, as for this 5 blood spirit crown competition, she trusted Wang Lu more. "A Yi, what's the significance of this 5 blood spirit crown to you?" Upon hearing this, A Yi was startled, and then he frowned and thought hard. After a long time, he said, "In my opinion, whoever wants that thing can have it. I don't *king care about it. I'm living a good life in Harmony River. As long as you don't bother me, whoever wants to be the king of this world can go ahead." Wang Lu couldn't help but be curious. "This explanation is inconsistent with your behavior of being the first to arrive at Grey Mountain." A Yi waved his hand. "It's not that I want to go. My wife is still at home, so I had no choice but to go. However, at first, she insisted that I lead the army, or at least bring my personal guards. I didn't listen to her. Everyone knows that there's only one little girl left in Grey Mountain. Wouldn't it be shameful for me to bring so many people there?" "Wait a minute, you have a wife?" Wang Lu was really surprised. "What's wrong?" A Yi was surprised. "I'm so handsome, isn't it natural for me to have a wife?" Moreover, my wife must be one of the most beautiful women in this world to be worthy of me. Oh, by the way, I also have 2 children. Although they're not as handsome as me, they're still among the most handsome men in this world. You also have children? Ha ha ha, of course. I'm a man among men. If I don't even have children, how could it be? Ah, it just so happens that my wife and children are back. I'll introduce them to you. With that, Yi suddenly walked out of the courtyard and called out, "Wife, come quickly, there's a guest at home." Wang Lu looked at the direction of Yi's finger and saw a green cloud slowly descending from the horizon. A woman in an emerald green dress stood on the cloud with a graceful posture. Behind her were 2 twin brothers who were holding hands. The woman really had a peerless elegance. Her beautiful eyes moved as she smiled at Wang Lu and the others. Her smile made all the flowers on the banks of Harmony River pale in comparison. However, what really surprised Wang Lu was that the woman's wood element spiritual energy was as vast as the sea. The woman looked delicate, but in terms of strength, she was probably not inferior to a Yi. And in this world, to have such a cultivation base. Hee, beautiful, right? A Yi flaunted, the leader of Eternal Tree, Sacred Leaf, Shaman, is my wife. Chapter 402. The leader of Eternal Tree, the Sacred Leaf, was the wife of the king of Harmony River. Hearing Yi's explanation, Wang Lu finally understood why this man, whose IQ was suspected to be seriously defective, confidently said that the alliance between Harmony River and Eternal Tree was unbreakable. It turned out that the 2 forces were actually connected by marriage. With such a relationship, with Yi's temperament, he would indeed think that the alliance between the 2 forces was unbreakable. Wang Lu thought that Yi would say, "I'm so handsome, which ally would be willing to abandon me?" It was obviously not the first time that Zhou Mumu saw the sacred leaf of Eternal Tree. Hearing Yi showing off, she sneered and said, "Be careful, your wife is now your competitor." In the context of the battle for the 5 blood spirits crown, it is not uncommon for husband and wife to turn against each other. As a result, Yi laughed and said, "I'm so handsome, my wife would not be willing to betray me." Zhou Mumu disapproved of this and even sneered. However, she also knew that Yi was a person who was easy to talk to in other areas, but once he decided on something, he would not turn back, especially when it came to his handsomeness. Therefore, Zhou Mumu was too lazy to say more. She sneered a few times and then ignored him. Not long after, a green cloud descended from the sky, and the sacred leaf shaman of Eternal Tree appeared in front of the crowd with the 2 children. She then nodded slightly to Wang Lu and Lan. Shaman's posture was graceful and elegant. Even the most demanding person could not find anything wrong with her. Compared to Shaman, Yi was much more enthusiastic. He directly ran over and hugged Shaman, kissed her deeply on the cheek, and then touched the 2 children's heads. Amidst the children's cheers, he carried them on his shoulders and pointed to Wang Lu and Lan. These 2 are the earth spirit Wang Lu and the waste girl from Grey Mountain. Come, say hello. The 2 almost identical little boys smiled and waved at Wang Lu and Lan, but did not speak. Yi explained, "Don't look at how big they are actually only 1 year old. They can't speak, but they are very sensible, much better than me when I was a child. They completely inherited their mother's specialty. In the future, one of them would be the king of Harmony River, while the other would be the sacred leaf of the Eternal Tree. The alliance between the 2 would be even more unbreakable. Hey, the luckiest thing in my life is marrying a good wife and giving birth to 2 good sons." While speaking, Yi's eyes revealed a strong sense of attachment and love. However, just as Yi was immersed in the happiness of his family, an untimely voice rang out. "I'm hungry." Lan touched her stomach and said coldly. Yi was taken aback, and then coldly and arrogantly said, "There's no food for waste here." Before he could finish his words, he saw the Eternal Tree's sacred leaf frown slightly. Yi. He's a guest. Upon hearing this, Yi was shocked. His frosty expression immediately melted and was replaced with a flattering smile. He said to Lan, "If you're hungry, come to my house for a meal. Come, follow me into the house." With that, he walked into the house. Alas! As a Ye's follower, seeing this scene, Zhou Mumu could only sigh. However, Wang Lu looked at the couple with interest. While following a Yi into the house, he said to Shaman, "Usually, it's hard to take care of him, right?" Shaman smiled reservedly. A Yi is very sentimental. His words and deeds may be inconsistent with secular etiquette, but he always does things from his heart. I think this sincere heart is the most valuable, so he never feels that it's hard. Wang Lu nodded, and then, seemingly unintentionally, asked, "I see that a Yi is not interested in governing the country. Do you usually help him take care of a lot of things?" Shaman was startled, but a Yi, who was walking in front of her, had already answered, "It's all Shaman's help. She is now in charge of the state affairs of 2 countries and is often very busy. But if I really have to deal with those state affairs, it would be very annoying." "Oh, then you really have a good wife," Wang Lu said and gave Shaman a meaningful look. The woman looked at her husband affectionately and said, "This is a Ye's trust in me. Others only say that he is incompetent in governing the country, that he is muddle-headed and ignores the state affairs, but who can really have such a free and easy heart? And with such a pure heart, any miracle is possible around him." Wang Lu said with a smile, saying that he is so good. "Are you trying to help your husband recruit me? I thought your position would not be so gentle." Shaman slightly lowered her head, but then changed the topic. "Not long ago, I forced a Yi to go to Grey Mountain. I told him that there are many variables in the battle for the 5 blood spirits crown. Even with the joint efforts of water and wood, it cannot guarantee absolute safety. And among the 5 forces, Grey Mountain is the weakest. If we can eliminate Grey Mountain and collect the Earth Spirit power, we can then truly be in an invincible position. In fact, until now, I still think that this judgment is not wrong. But since a Yi brought you back, obviously he has his own judgment, and I, no matter what, will always respect his will." Wang Lu said, "Even when it comes to real power, isn't it obvious that you, the queen who manages the affairs of the 2 countries, is superior?" Shaman said, "Between husband and wife, how can everything be decided by the strength of the authority? I respect him and love him, what does it have to do with power?" While talking, the group had crossed the exquisite courtyard and entered the house. A Yi led them straight to the dining room. There was a round table in the hall. He didn't pay attention to the hierarchy and just casually asked them to sit down. Then, he clapped his hands and shouted, "Little ones, there are guests in the house, bring out your best skills." Not long after, a group of dwarves in white clothes and white hats came out of the kitchen. With comical movements, they brought all kinds of fine wine and delicacies to the table. Although these chefs were unprepossessing, their culinary skills were amazing. The dishes on the table were not delicacies, nor were there any expensive ingredients, but they looked, smelled, and were all rare and precious delicacies. In particular, the wine on the table was even more extraordinary. It was said that a Yi himself personally collected the river essence from the deepest part of Harmony River, picked evergreen leaves from the eternal tree, and brewed it with abundant rice. When it first entered the mouth, it was hot and unbearable, but when it entered the stomach, there was a trace of coolness, which made people feel relaxed and happy. At the table, the topic gradually deepened as they toasted each other. Perhaps a Yi brought Wang Lu home just to drink wine and make merry with the person he liked, and to connect with each other. However, at this table, only a Yi and Lan were truly immersed in the joy of wine and food. A Yi kept drinking, while Lan, with an elegant posture and amazing speed, swallowed most of the food on the table into her stomach. Except for these 2 weirdos, the rest of the people had their own thoughts. Even Wang Lu only tasted the food and spent most of his time talking with Shaman. Between the husband and wife, the one who could really make the decision was Shaman. Don't look at how willful a Yi could ignore Shaman's request and act arbitrarily. However, if Shaman insisted that a Yi kill the earth spirit at all costs, would ye refuse? At this time, the peace was nothing more than shaman herself feeling that maintaining the peace was more beneficial. After all, that was then and this was now. Since they realized that Wang Lu was not the kind of opponent that could be easily dealt with, then Harmony River and Eternal Tree naturally needed a living earth spirit as an ally. And the topic on the table was mainly about the alliance in the 5 blood spirit crown power struggle. This dispute has made this world turbulent, and it is difficult for any party to stay out of it. And now, the power of Golden City is too strong, and it is difficult for any party to contend against it. Only by joining forces and forming an alliance would there be a chance of survival. However, as far as I know, in most of the history, when several weak forces confront a strong force, even if their total strength is far above the strong force, in the end, they would still lose more than they win. This is because the weak forces are always unable to cooperate sincerely. Instead, they each have their own ulterior motives, and even drag each other down. At the dinner table, Shaman gently sipped the wine brewed by her husband. She temporarily let go of the reserved sacred leaf and, in a straightforward manner, explained her understanding of the situation to Wang Lu. Regarding Shaman's analysis, Wang Lu nodded in agreement. Indeed, the alliance between the weak forces, no matter how much effort is put into managing it, will always have many flaws, and then be broken one by one. After all, the hearts of the forces are different, and it is impossible to be like a powerful and unified force. Therefore, from your point of view, persuading a Yi to go to Grey Mountain to harvest the Earth Spirit power is indeed the right choice. According to the rules of the 5 blood spirit crown power struggle, when any blood spirit was killed, the killer would obtain the blood spirit power of that blood spirit. And when 4 of the 5 spirits were lost, the blood spirit that gathered the power of the 5 spirits, as well as the master of that blood spirit, would obtain the 5 blood spirit crown and henceforth rule the world. And during this period, the successful killing of the blood spirit would rapidly improve one's own strength. Although it would inevitably be accompanied by losses, it was, after all, a power that was in one's own hands, which was stable and solid. Shaman said, "Now, among the 5 spirits, we have already gathered 3 of them, which is more than half. However, in fact, our comprehensive strength is only slightly better than Flaming Valley, and it is still not enough compared to Golden City. At present, the best strategy is to unite with Flaming Valley to contend against Golden City. However, the situation of Flaming Valley is very special, and the difficulty to unite with them is extraordinary. Moreover, as previously analyzed, the more forces that unite, the more difficult it is to maintain the cohesion of this alliance. When the time comes, not only would we not enjoy the convenience of the alliance, we would even suffer from it." Wang Lu said, "So in your opinion?" Shaman said, "In my opinion, it's best for Golden City and Flaming Valley to go to war. When both of them are mutually wounded, we can reap the benefits." Wang Lu laughed in spite of himself. "This is too whimsical. Right now, whether it's Golden City or Flaming Valley, obviously, we are the priority target. They have 3 blood spirits, but their comprehensive strength is mediocre. If it were me, I would never let go of such a suitable target while fighting a unified powerful force endlessly." Shaman somewhat mysteriously smiled. "But what if they have a reason to go to war? Once the war starts, it would not be easy to control. Although the strength of Flaming Valley is only 60 to 70% of Golden City, the 5 elements mutually restrain fire and metal. If they go all out in a war, Golden City would not have the ability to end the war quickly and would definitely fall into a quagmire." Wang Lu asked, "Do they have a reason to go to war?" "They didn't before, so I'll just give them one." Just as Wang Lu asked this question, a hearty man's voice came from outside the dining room. Faster than the sound, a flash of lightning flashed into the room and gradually turned into a clear figure at the dining table, which cheerfully smiled at Wang Lu. "Long time no see, junior brother Wang Lu." Wang Lu looked at that figure in surprise, got up and said, "The Flash." "Junior brother Wang Lu, I haven't seen you for several years, don't tell me you don't recognize me?" Zhang Zai was inexplicably sad and indignant. Chapter 403. Upon hearing the words, junior brother Wang Lu finally realized the identity of this person. You. Wang Lu looked at the person in front of him in surprise and could not help but stand up. From the familiar magical power fluctuation of the thunder body, Wang Lu finally confirmed the identity of the other party, which was the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect, Zhang Zai. It was not surprising to see Zhang Zai here. Among the 5 lead disciples of the 5 sects, 3 of them had already been determined. Wang Lu belonged to the earth element Grey Mountain, Zhou Mumu belonged to the water element Harmony River, and Xiong Hua was the luckiest. She was assigned to Golden City, where she had the best geographical advantage. Only the lead disciples of Royal Soldier sect and 10,000 Arts sect, it was unknown who was assigned to Flaming Valley and who was assigned to Eternal Tree. However, based on Wang Lu's current understanding of this immortal dreamland, Zhang Zai was obviously more suitable for Eternal Tree. It was just that, after a few years, Zhang Zai's change was so great that Wang Lu didn't recognize him at first glance. In fact, no matter how forgetful Wang Lu was, he still remembered the lead disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. However, compared to the exchange between the 2 sects on Spirit Sword Mountain, Zhang Zai's change was simply earth-shattering. In terms of magical power cultivation base, a few years ago, Zhang Zai was close to Shudan stage, Foundation Establishment stage. But now, he was only peak Shudan stage, which was the same as him. In terms of cultivation base, he was actually not as good as him. However, the general stage classification method had always been invalid in front of the lead disciples of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. Although Zhang Zai was peak Shudan stage, his thunder body was more than 20 layers, which was enough for him to look down on the vast majority of Daoist Master King Pill in the world. Even Wang Lu himself was deeply shocked when he saw that instantaneous movement just now. He was confident that his non-phase sword art's defensive power was number 1 in the world, but in the face of an unusually fast opponent, relying on his non-phase sword art alone, he only had the power to protect himself. However, compared to his cultivation base advancement, the real change was reflected in his temperament. After not seeing him for a few years, Zhang Zai seemed to have been reborn, from a young and inexperienced teenager to a young man who could take charge of an area. This was completely different from the common arrogance of the cultivators of 10,000 Arts sect. After all, other disciples could be isolated from the world and concentrate on their own research, but Zhang Zai was the lead disciple of the 10,000 Arts sect, the future successor of the sect leader. In addition to having a high cultivation base and profound knowledge, he must also have the ability to lead the entire sect. After a few years of experience, he was getting closer to his master, Supreme Tian Luan. In this regard, Wang Lu couldn't help but sigh. None of the chief disciples of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League were easy to deal with. If they didn't work hard enough, they could be surpassed by others, no matter in what aspect. However, as the lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect, Wang Lu's own progress was not inferior to anyone. Even if Zhang Zai had undergone earth-shaking changes, he could still talk to him with confidence. Senior brother Zai, you've changed a lot in the past few years. Upon hearing this, Zhang Zai's eyes lit up and he said proudly, you also noticed? I grew a beard. Zhang Zai flaunted his 2 to 3 inches long beard on his chin. According to my research in the 10,000 Arts sect, growing a beard can effectively change a person's external image. More than 70% of the female respondents said that they think a man with a beard is more mature than a man without a beard. And in the historical records, before the age of chaos, there was an exceptionally beautiful beard, like a senior with 4 eyebrows. His affinity with the opposite sex was very good, and in his life, there were many beautiful women. In addition to his unique personality charm, his iconic beard was also an important factor. A few years ago, I tried to pursue junior sister Lu Li, but to no avail. Later, I turned to pursue other women, but the progress was also not smooth. Thus, I thought of growing a beard, and now it seems that it really works. Halfway through his words, Zhang Zai seemed to realize that he had gone off topic. He hurriedly gave an apologetic smile to Wang Lu, and then cupped his hands towards Sacred Leaf Shaman. Shaman, however, did not care about Zhang Zai's intimate conversation with Wang Lu and just nodded to Zhang Zai. Zhang Zai said with a sinking voice, "Madam Sacred Leaf, I have completed all the tasks according to the plan. Now that the war between Golden City and Flaming Valley has begun, the Flaming Valley Legion has set foot on the territory of Golden City, and our chance to reap the benefits is right in front of us." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was startled. Golden City and Flaming Valley have already started a war? The two most powerful forces in this five-way power struggle have actually started a war? Shaman, however, seemed to have already expected this. She said with great satisfaction, "Very good, indeed worthy to be the spirit of all blood spirits." Zhang Zai said, "This is not my credit. It's just that Golden City and Flaming Valley have long had a grudge. They both regard each other as their biggest opponent and wish for the other party to die quickly. When the situation forms a delicate balance, they can still maintain restraint and not fight each other. However, this kind of balance based on multiple restraints is too fragile. Long-term hostility has made both sides tense up and ready to fight at any moment. As long as there is a little change, it could cause a landslide and tsunami chain reaction." Seeing that Wang Lu didn't seem to understand much about this and even had some objections, Zhang Zai took the initiative to explain, "Indeed, according to the research data, in most similar situations, before the two opposing giants come into direct contact, they would usually choose a third party as the wrestling field. In this way, regardless of victory or defeat, there would be room for mediation. And from this theory, when Golden City and Flaming Valley are mutually restraining each other, Harmony River, Eternal Tree, and Grey Mountain, these three forces are instead the most dangerous." However, this point has been revised after many discussions with Madam Sacred Leaf, because Flaming Valley can't be measured with common sense. They are a group of irrational, warlike lunatics who take pride in challenging the strong. Over the years, they have repeatedly provoked war against Golden City. Were it not for Flaming Valley setting up a group of elders composed of several great sages, who would constantly stop the unplanned behavior of Flaming Valley, they would have died thousands of years ago because of their warlike nature. However, the role of the group of elders is limited. If they encounter a situation that is intolerable in the eyes of Flaming Valley, no one can stop their war. By this point, Wang Lu had already guessed what exactly Zhang Zai did. "That's right," Zhang Zai said with a smile, "I used 10,000 methods comprehension to imitate the spell of the golden-clad celestial generals of Golden City and massacred a sentry post at the border of Flaming Valley. This immediately aroused the monstrous anger of Flaming Valley." Wang Lu couldn't help but chuckle. "It's really simple and crude." It's indeed simple and crude, but under careful examination, it's actually full of flaws. However, as long as they can't guess that I have 10,000 methods comprehension, they can't explain the spell that I used to massacre the sentry post. The spell of the golden-clad celestial generals of Golden City is unique. In this world, no one can cultivate it, let alone cast it. Therefore, since the people in the sentry post died under the spell of the celestial generals, then the killer must be the golden-clad celestial generals of Golden City. Thus, it's imperative for them to retaliate. Thus, I conveniently helped them by imitating the summoning of the heavenly fire of Flaming Valley and burned a city on the periphery of Golden City. After that, no one could stop the fierce battle between the two sides. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu suddenly asked, "How strong is Qionghua's control over Golden City?" Zhang Zai said, "Junior brother Wang Lu is indeed a smart person. You directly asked the point. According to my understanding, Qionghua's control over Golden City is very poor, almost zero." "Oh," Zhang Zai said, "this is probably the balance strategy of the immortal dreamland. In the five spirits power struggle, each of us five lead disciples corresponds to one of the forces. Among the five forces, Golden City is the strongest, and among the five, Qianghua is the strongest. Moreover, she is different from us. Her entire team entered the immortal dreamland. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu interjected, "How many people from Qionghua's team actually came?" "So many people. Who exactly is the gold spirit?" 36, each of them is a gold spirit. Zhang Zai said, "As for Qianghua herself, she is the king of gold spirit." King of gold spirit? There's such a rank? Why do I feel like we're not playing the same game? Yes, a strong alliance that leaves everyone else behind. But how could there be such an unfair thing in the world? Qianghua has a great advantage, but she also has a great hidden danger. Her team and the master of Golden City are not on good terms. Not only can they not cooperate sincerely, they even plot against each other. In this case, no matter how brilliant Qianghua is, she can't display it. Let alone, as far as I know, she can't even protect herself. Can't protect herself? Wang Lu was somewhat curious. Golden City is too strong, so strong that they think that even without the assistance of the blood spirit, they can still win this power struggle. Therefore, Qionghua's team is not important to them. On the contrary, those people from Xingjing's sect who are accustomed to being strong are variables that are difficult to control, so. Speaking to this, Zhang Zai shrugged his shoulders. Let Xingjing's sect people experience the troubles of a strong alliance. Next, we just need to prepare to watch the fight and wait for the result of the decisive battle between Golden City and Flaming Valley. As for the showdown between you, me, and senior sister Zhou, let's wait until after both Xingjing's sect and Royal Soldier sect are eliminated. With that, Zhang Zai revealed a relaxed posture. He sat at the corner of the dining table and began to drink heartily. However, Wang Lu was not so optimistic. Would things be that simple? The opponent is Qianghua, and her endless miracles in recent years are not just based on public opinion. If this situation can make things difficult for Qianghua, then she doesn't deserve to be the lead disciple of Xingjing's sect. Wang Lu closed his eyes, thought for a moment, and then suddenly stood up. I'm going out for a walk. With that, regardless of the fact that the banquet was not over yet, Wang Lu walked out of the door. At the same time, in the distant Golden City, in a quiet and spacious hall, a beautiful girl sat upright with her eyes closed in rapt attention. Although the hall was bright and spacious, it was isolated from the rest of the world, like an empty prison. Suddenly, the girl seemed to be aware of something. She opened her eyes and softly muttered to herself in a distant voice. Sure enough, it's the strategy of driving the tiger to swallow the wolf. Chapter 404. The girl's distant and light voice reverberated in the hall. However, when it reached the edge of the hall, it was blocked by an invisible force, not even the slightest bit leaked out. It was a quiet but strict prison rampart. However, in this prison, there was another voice that sounded. Yes, it's driving the tiger to swallow the wolf. A certain lead disciple who is good at imitating has massacred the border sentry with the golden-clad celestial general's 10,000 sword secret art, and then ran to the peripheral city of Golden City to summon the heavenly fire. It's ridiculous that such a simple trick has a perfect effect. The group of barbarians from Flaming Valley has officially shed all pretense of cordiality and declared war on Golden City. The vanguard army is assembling, and the Sandpiper and Clams fight seems to be imminent. With that, a looming blue figure slowly condensed in the hall. A moment later, a very sturdy man appeared beside the girl, with a face full of ridicule and resentment. The girl was actually indifferent. What did the city master say? What else can he say? Golden City is used to being overbearing in this world. When has it ever suffered grievance? It's already fortunate that it doesn't take the initiative to provoke others. Now that Flaming Valley has come to its door, how could it avoid the fight? The city master has already gathered his troops and horses, ready to fight to the death with Flaming Valley. TSK, this is exactly what other people want. And if it's exactly what they want, then fine, but at this time, this group of mediocre fools still want to fight among themselves, putting a great expert like you under house arrest in the Hall of Coolness. The more the sturdy man said, the angrier he became. Unable to restrain himself, he punched the pillar of the hall. The pillar buzzed, which drove the entire hall to tremble. "Calm down," the girl lightly said. And as she spoke, the shaking of the hall also stopped. The sturdy man shook his head and angrily said, "Senior Sister Cheonghua, you're really... Alas, you really have good self-restraint. You're being bullied, yet you're still not impatient. If Golden City and Flaming Valley both suffer, I'm afraid the other three forces would laugh themselves to death." Cheonghua said, "That's normal. If Golden City doesn't have any conflict with the other four forces, if Golden City can sincerely cooperate with us, then there would be no suspense in this five spirits power struggle. And a situation without suspense is meaningless to the immortal dreamland itself. Although the immortal dreamland did not demand fairness, there would not be a situation that was too unbalanced. The predicament we are facing is just like the huge advantage we have. Both are objective conditions that cannot be denied. Yes, Senior Sister's words are reasonable, but there must be a way to deal with it, right? Golden City has now completely lost its trust in us. Previously, according to Senior Sister's instructions, I spent a lot of effort to let Luan Yu find a way to lead a gold-clad army, but in the end, we encountered an unreasonable king of Harmony River. After this defeat, the relationship between us and Golden City is really like a stranger." The burly man complained helplessly, but after listening to his complaints, Cheonghua showed a faint smile. "It would be best if we were strangers. Both our sides have the advantage in strength to suppress the entire battlefield. If there is no internal strife, even if we do our own thing and don't cooperate, our chances of winning should be more than 40%. Only 40%? Among the top 5, our Xingjing sect alone has a 40% chance of winning, which is already blessed by heaven. If we are still not satisfied and hope to get the support of Golden City, we would spend our energy and mind on dealing with Golden City, and then we would be stuck in a quagmire, unable to extricate ourselves. Therefore, from now on, it is the ideal situation to be like strangers. If we can get rid of Golden City and fully display our strength, we will still have an excellent advantage." With that, Cheonghua finally stood up, and as she stood up, the entire hall began to collapse. However, when the hall collapsed, there was a stronger force that suppressed it. Cheonghua's body slightly swayed, and she had no choice but to sit down again. The burly man tried to reach out to support her, but was stopped by a stern look from Cheonghua. "It seems like now is not the time for me to make my move. Then, junior brother Jianglu, please lead the junior brothers and sisters to suppress the eternal tree." "Yes." Also, the opponent is, after all, the lead disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, so don't try to be brave. Upon hearing this, Jianglu earnestly cupped his hands toward Cheonghua and said, "Jianglu will not let Senior Sister down." Before his voice fell, he turned into a wisp of breeze and disappeared from the hall without a trace. Cheonghua somewhat helplessly looked at the distant Jianglu and softly said her unfinished words. "Those who try to be brave will die." At the same time, on the quiet Harmony River, Wang Lu walked along the riverbank with his hands behind his back. This was the border checkpoint of Harmony River, although this river that runs through this world should not have the concept of border. In fact, if one wanted to get close to the lower reaches of Harmony River and the Eternal Tree, one must pass through some checkpoints. Otherwise, one would inevitably get lost in the boundless water. The special characteristic of the Void Spirit root allowed him to drive the tide of the water element spiritual energy to surge every time he breathed. It was just that, during the surge, it showed a tranquil and natural scene, which showed that Wang Lu's control over the spiritual energy and magical power had gradually reached a fine level, becoming more and more skillful and mellow. He was very close to the King Pill realm. And just as Wang Lu gradually immersed his mind into the unique spiritual energy atmosphere of Harmony River and began to meditate, a voice behind him suddenly interrupted his contemplation. "Hey, what are you doing?" Turning around, he saw Zhou Mumu's smiling face behind him. The girl seemed to be in high spirits, and her white jade-like cheeks were stained with a touch of red. Obviously, she had just drunk some good wine at the dinner table. Seeing that the person was Zhou Mumu, Wang Lu restrained his thoughts, used his primordial spirit to control the magical power in his body, spat out a mouthful of foul air, and then said with a smile, "Take a walk." Zhou Mumu asked, "Take a walk?" Wang Lu explained, "As the saying goes, walk 100 steps after a meal." Zhou Mumu suddenly pursed her mouth and said with a funny smile, "Live to 99? You're about to become the Daoist master of the King Pill realm, so you should have at least 200 or 300 years of lifespan. If you live to 99 years old, wouldn't you die prematurely? This joke is really cold, it's not like you at all." After the joke, Zhou Mumu stopped smiling. "Don't worry?" Wang Lu rhetorically asked, "You're not worried?" Zhang Zai's strategy of driving the tiger to swallow the wolf sounded flawless. In fact, under the general trend, the conflict between Golden City and Flaming Valley was inevitable. If these two didn't fight, how could the other three survive? What was the point of this 5 spirits power struggle? However, on the other hand, regardless of how strong Golden City was, behind Golden City was the lead disciple of Xingjing sect, Qianghua. Zhang Zai could drive the tiger to swallow the wolf, but couldn't Qianghua pretend to be a pig to eat the tiger? Right now, it seemed like Qianghua's team was restrained by Golden City, but who knew how many cards she had? Who knew if she was just showing weakness to the enemy? In recent years, there was no direct conflict between the several lead disciples of the 5 uniques. However, apart from that, all the opponents of Qianghua had been defeated. In the face of an invincible Qianghua, it was never too much to be cautious. The people of 10,000 Arts sect have always been proficient in spells and neglected the secular people's hearts. Therefore, it's understandable that Junior Brother Zai's mind is simple, but we don't have such good luck. Zhou Mumu smiled. In fact, when Junior Brother Zai said that his task was a success, I was already guessing when Xingjing sect people would come. Wang Lu was somewhat surprised. This Zhou Mumu actually thought ahead of him? Was it really true that even a fool's 1,000 thoughts could be right? Zhou Mumu saw the doubt in Wang Lu's eyes and explained, "In this 5 spirits power struggle, the lead disciples of the 5 sects have entered the immortal dream land one after another. Among them, Xingjing sect is the earliest, which has been nearly a month, followed by Royal Soldier sect, which is only 1 or 2 days later than Xingjing sect. Junior Brother Zai and I entered here 15 days ago. Junior Brother Wang, your time in this ring is the shortest. However, as soon as you joined, the 5 spirits power struggle officially began, which didn't give you any buffer time. Therefore, you have the least information, so you don't know anything. In this ring, although Xingjing sect people are the most restrained, their oppression is actually the strongest. Before you came, we have already had a conflict with Xingjing sect people. Although limited by the situation, we didn't make a big move, but Xingjing sect people's aggressiveness is without a doubt. Even without Qianghua, they still refuse to restrain themselves. Junior Brother Zai has schemed against Golden City, so Xingjing sect people will certainly not let this go. And judging from the overall strength of Xingjing sect team, even if Qianghua herself doesn't make a move, we may not be able to contend against them. After all, they have too many people. 36 Xingjing sect inner court elites are no small matter. Wang Lu said, "So senior sister, you came to help me? Well, I appreciate your kindness, but I think it's better for you to go back." Zhou Mumu frowned. "Junior brother, you don't believe me?" Wang Lu asked back, "Senior sister, you don't believe me?" Upon hearing this, Zhou Mumu was stunned. She somewhat curiously and earnestly looked at Wang Lu's clear eyes. A moment later, a cheerful smile once again climbed up her face. "Very well, senior sister believes you. But, don't let senior sister down." With that, accompanied by a burst of laughter, Zhou Mumu turned into a ray of light and flew away. After sending off Zhou Mumu, Wang Lu turned around and once again looked at the misty Harmony River. In silence, a smile hung on his face. "Come out, isn't it uncomfortable to soak in the water?" As his voice fell, dozens of ripples appeared on the calm surface of the water. The murderous intent was awe-inspiring. At the same time, in the capital city of Harmony River, in a Ye's house, the long banquet was still not over. The laughter in the dining room never stopped. What the hell, how many times has this been? This girl, your strength is not good, your brain is not good, but your appetite is really against the heaven. A Ye's fussy voice penetrated the narrow courtyard and reached the street. Zhou Mumu, who had just returned from the border checkpoint of Harmony River, could not help but sigh when she heard a Ye's intoxicated voice. What? You still want to eat? What the hell, do you know that my family's storehouse has already been emptied by you? What you're eating now is basically the National Treasury Reserve of Harmony River. What, you're still hungry? It's none of my business. Incompetent people like you better all starve to death. What? Isn't this the way to treat a guest? What the hell, do you still have any face? I only invited you home for the sake of your earth element blood spirit. Do you really think of yourself as a distinguished guest? Shaman, don't try to persuade me. This kind of waste is not worthy of my family's hospitality. Io, don't be angry, I'm just saying, I'm not serious. Ha ha ha, lawn girl, eat as much as you want. Now that you've come to my house, how can you not eat until you're full? Even if you dig up the eternal tree and eat it, I won't object. Hearing this, Zhou Mumu simply didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was just that, although it was funny, the girl's face did not show a smile. She turned her eyes to the back and lightly said, "Come out, don't hide anymore. Let's hurry up, I still want to go back to eat." Chapter 405. I say, Xingjing sect people, don't soak in the water. Along with Wang Lu's ridicule on the shore, the calm water suddenly broke into thousands of pieces. Dozens of figures quietly floated up from the river, and an astonishing murderous aura filled the air. The birds in the woods on both sides of the river were startled, and the fish and shrimps in the water competed to stay dormant. Upon seeing this, Wang Lu sneered. Pretend, continue to pretend. My sword of Mount Kun blocked the water path, making it difficult for you to continue to sneak. You've been holding your breath in the water for so long, yet you still have to pretend to be calm. Your shameless appearance is really an eye-opener. Is this what Fairy Qianghua usually teaches you? Hearing Wang Lu mention Fairy Qianghua, among the dozens of people, some of them suddenly couldn't hold back. A cultivator with a white face and childlike appearance retorted, "You think you're qualified to comment on senior sister Qianghua?" However, Wang Lu didn't think much of it. He beckoned with his hand, and a simple and unadorned heavy sword floated out of the water. The sword spirit Autumn Beam's shadow stepped on the sword and indifferently sized up the Xingjing sect team. You guys can't even break through my sword of Mount Kun. I alone can stand on the riverside and block the path of dozens of you. Seriously, are you really members of Qianghua sect team? Aren't you just a cheerleader? Block the path? That white-faced boy sneered. You really think you're infallible? Do you think we're stopping here because of your broken sword? We're here to wait for you. Just when you thought you had stopped everyone who should have passed has already passed. Wang Lu was not surprised by this. Do you mean the two fish and the prawn? Ridiculous, do you think you can hide from me with a mere transformation technique? If I didn't intentionally let them go, how could they pass? Hearing Wang Lu mention the two fish and the prawn, the white-faced boy's complexion changed. He no longer entangled with Wang Lu and angrily shouted, "Do it!" On the surface of the water, dozens of people attacked at the same time. The spells that had been brewing for a long time poured out in torrents. For a moment, even the sky seemed to change color. Wang Lu immediately recalled his sword of Mount Kun and protected himself with his non-phase sword defense. When the spells came into contact with the sword defense, they all vanished into thin air. Even the sword light could not shake it at all. However, Wang Lu did not feel proud of himself. Instead, he felt that something was amiss. No matter how confident he was in his non-phase sword, he didn't think that it would be so easy for him to resist Xingjing's sect team. 36 elite inner court disciples, even Xianghua herself might not necessarily be able to win a head-on fight against them. But now, he didn't even use 50 to 60% of his strength, yet his defense was impregnable. Was Xingjing's sect team really that weak? Or, were these people really from Xingjing's sect? Thinking to this, Wang Lu immediately searched his memory. Before he entered the group of immortal tombs, he had a chance encounter with Xionghua's team. At that time, although he didn't pay much attention to them, he had already remembered everyone in the team, and then compared them at this time. Tisk, sure enough, it doesn't match. Wang Lu suddenly realized that these people who released the spells were not from Xingjing's sect team. Combined with the appearance of these spells, they were mostly used to lure him into a defensive position. Their purpose was not to break non-phase sword defense, but to stop him here so that they could launch their real lethal move. And as for that move, Wang Lu had no interest in experiencing it. Any person in this world, in the face of an entire team of elite cultivators from Xingjing's sect, would not dare to take them lightly, let alone the other party had been planning this for a long time, specifically to deal with him. Although Wang Lu was not sure how Xingjing's sect team planned to break his invincible non-phase sword defense, he was very clear that to deal with him, they didn't necessarily have to break his non-phase sword defense. At this moment, the best course of action was to escape. Wang Lu's reaction was quite fast, but how could it be that easy to escape from the trap specially designed for him by Xingjing's sect team? When Wang Lu was ready to withdraw his sword defense and leave the field, in mid-air, including the white-faced boy, everyone turned into phantoms and dissipated. The sky was suddenly shrouded by dark clouds, and Harmony River and its two banks lit up. One bright and one dark, faintly showing the scene of the beginning of chaos and the separation of yin and yang. As soon as this vision appeared, Wang Lu was shocked. This is yin and yang treasure chest. Fortunately, he had done a special investigation on Xingjing's sect team. After seeing this vision, Wang Lu immediately reacted to the other party's means, which was the famous magical treasure of the Wangyue siblings, yin and yang treasure chest. And he himself had been plotted against and thrown into the yin and yang treasure chest. Sure enough, after Wang Lu identified the magical treasure, Wanyu's laughter rang in the sky. Wang Lu, this time, I finally caught you. Amidst the laughter, the sky melted, and the sky became gloomy. The earth collapsed, and the surging river turned into an endless waterfall that flowed into the abyss. And the place where Wang Lu stood was constantly collapsing. The remaining part vaguely showed the shape of a palm, which made Wang Lu look like he was in the palm of someone else. This time, I want to see how you can escape. Regarding Wanyu's provocation, Wang Lu felt helpless. Because the other party's repeated provocations and entanglements reminded him of the joke about the hunter and the bear. And if he stood from the bear's point of view, Wanyu was really not an opponent that could arouse his interest. That being the case, let's end this quickly. The yin and yang treasure chest was also a bit famous in the Wanxian League. The Wangyue siblings held the yin and yang sides, which was already a powerful spiritual treasure. And after the yin and yang combination, it was even more powerful. Perhaps in terms of eruption and power, the yin and yang treasure chest was not as good as the immortal sword Skybreaker or the primal chaos diamond ring. However, in terms of applicability and versatility, it was second to none among the spiritual treasures of the same level. And among its many functions, one of them happened to be able to deal with Wang Lu's non-phase method. Storage. Since it was named as a treasure chest, this spiritual treasure gathered the two yin and yang energies to evolve into tens of thousands of magical treasures. One of its biggest effects was storage. When this chest was held in the hands of the siblings, it was only 2 feet square, but the internal space was vast and boundless. Moreover, along with the upgrade of the spiritual treasure, it could become even vaster. At the same time, the storage space was also very stable. Thus, as long as they could find a way to trap Wang Lu in this treasure chest, with the explosive power and speed of his non-phase method, it would be very difficult for him to get out. On the other hand, with the strength of the Wang Yue siblings alone, it was very difficult to hurt Wang Lu with the yin and yang treasure chest. Moreover, in order to maintain the space inside the chest, the two of them must constantly maintain the output of magical power. However, using this pair of siblings to stall Wang Lu was undoubtedly a big profit. Xingjing sect had indeed put in a lot of effort to deal with Wang Lu. However, how could Wang Lu not put in a lot of effort to deal with Xingjing sect people? Before entering the immortal dreamland, he didn't know that he would encounter the other 4 lead disciples of the 5 uniques. However, he never once relaxed his vigilance against Xingjing sect people. The aloof and remote Xianghua had always been on the list of Wang Lu's competitors. And with Wang Lu's temper, how could he not make a relevant plan? This scene just happened to let him verify something. Want to use a chest to lock me up? That's really whimsical. Wang Lu brandished the sword of Mount Kun in his hand. The simple and unadorned heavy sword drew an inviolable 3 feet sword defense. As the sword defense unfolded, it left a yellow arc in the air. The next moment, the marked 3 feet area was completely filled with non-phase sword light. Outside the 3 feet sword defense, the sword light didn't leak out in the slightest. It only existed in this 3 feet area, like a golden ball. Under the illumination of the light, it looked sacred and inviolable. Non-phase sword defense can reject any external force invasion. From within the golden ball, Wang Lu lightly opened his mouth, and his voice reverberated in the air. Which includes the support of the earth under my feet. As soon as his voice fell, the golden ball crashed into the ground, like a sharp knife cutting tofu. In the blink of an eye, the place where Wang Lu stood had been left with a bottomless pit. Wrapped in mud and stones, Wang Lu's falling momentum not only didn't slow down, but also got faster and faster. This was the method Wang Lu used to crack the treasure chest. The space inside the treasure chest couldn't be endless. As long as he fell from the air, he could quickly reach the bottom edge of the treasure chest, and then use the same method to bounce back the support of the bottom of the treasure chest with the nameless sword. This way, he didn't have to worry that the treasure chest wouldn't break. Non-phase method was not a simple turtle method. Otherwise, if anyone put a restriction on Wang Lu, he would be helpless, and it would be difficult for him to move even an inch in 9 regions. With this external force repelling spell, when Wang Lu fully operated the non-phase sword defense, no force could stop him from moving forward, and no cage could stop him from breaking through. Considering that non-phase method wasn't good at speed, in order to find the edge of the treasure chest as soon as possible, Wang Lu simply chose the fastest way down. This fall caused the earth inside the treasure chest to shake and the space to surge. And as Wang Lu's speed increased, the pulling force of this 3 feet radius golden ball on the space became stronger and stronger. Sure enough, Wang Yu, who was outside the treasure chest, exclaimed. However, after exclaiming, she sneered. You think you're smart. The next moment, Wang Lu suddenly found that his fall had stopped. Of course, it was not that the speed suddenly slowed down to 0, but rather that the speed would not become faster. His falling speed had become uniform. And this was not because there was an external force that affected him, but simply because the gravitational force that accelerated his fall had disappeared. Along with them, the surrounding soil and gravel also disappeared. Wang Lu's vision blurred for a moment, and then he found himself in darkness. There was nothing above, below, left, and right. Thus, without any change in speed, it was no different from being still. This was Wang Lu, we have long known that your non-phase sword is good at rebounding, so how could we give you the opportunity to rebound the external force? Now, as long as we turn the treasure chest into a vacuum, so that you can't borrow the force, and then continue to extend the boundary so that you are always in the center of the treasure chest, with your tortoise-like method, how could you get out? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was stunned for a moment, and then he actually applauded. Not bad, little sister Wang Yue, even a fool's 1,000 thoughts are right. You really came up with a good idea. Non-phase method was not good at eruption, nor was it good at long-distance exertion. The only thing that could strongly interfere with the outside world was to rely on the rebounding force. Therefore, as long as the space inside the treasure chest became a vacuum, Wang Lu would become a tree without roots. Unfortunately, this method of yours is just whimsical, because even in a vacuum, I can still exert force. With that, Wang Lu looked up to the sky and fiercely spat out a mouthful of air. With the help of the recoil force, he accelerated his fall. As Wang Lu's falling speed became faster and faster, the entire treasure chest space trembled. That was because the Wangyue siblings found it increasingly difficult to adapt to Wang Lu's high speed, making it difficult for them to locate him in the center of the treasure chest. How could this be? While Wangyue was in shock, Wang Lu chuckled. Little sister Wangyue, it's because you don't understand physics. Chapter 406. Crash. With a crisp sound like glass shattering, the pitch-black space collapsed into countless fragments. Through the gaps of the fragments, the scenery of the Harmony River was revealed. Under the strong impact, the yin and yang treasure chest of the Wangyue siblings was suddenly penetrated. The solid outer wall of the yin and yang treasure chest collided with the non-phase sword defense, but it only persisted for a moment before it collapsed. A golden ball of light penetrated through the chest and then crazily rotated above the Harmony River. At the same time, the two siblings, who were lurking on the other side of the river, vomited blood, and the immortal heart in their jade mansion shook as if it was about to burst. This yin and yang treasure chest has long been closely linked with their cultivation base, and along with the progress of their cultivation method, the level of their magical treasure would continue to rise. Not long ago, the yin and yang treasure chest had just completed its advancement, and its ability had been greatly evolved, which made it the sharp weapon that the two siblings used to fight against Wang Lu. However, conversely, if one of them suffered, all of them suffered. The treasure chest was not omnipotent. Although it had many magical abilities, it was also divided into its strengths and weaknesses. Among them, head-on collision was precisely its weakness. Although the treasure chest space was solid, it was still relatively speaking. In the face of Wang Lu's unreasonable non-phase sword defense, the yin and yang treasure chest absolutely could not hold on. Before this, they had made a number of contingency plans, all of which were to avoid a head-on collision with Wang Lu. However, they never thought that Wang Lu could actually use this kind of ingenious method to force them to have no other choice. When Wang Lu accelerated infinitely in the void, his speed accumulated to a horrifying level. No matter how the two siblings changed the treasure chest space, it was difficult for them to lock Wang Lu in the center of the space. Finally, Wang Lu seized the opportunity to fiercely hit the outer wall of the treasure chest. Thus, all of their hard work was like running water. It was not that their strength was too weak, nor was it that the yin and yang treasure chest's level was not high enough. It was because Wang Lu's unique tactic of counteracting the force of the yin and yang treasure chest made it impossible for them to guard against it. In fact, Wang Lu's infinite acceleration could only be used in the yin and yang treasure chest. Although the space within the treasure chest could change into anything, it was limited by the cultivation of the siblings. It was very different from the real world. The laws in the box had been highly simplified and were far less profound and complex than the real world. Otherwise, Wang Lu would have used it in the opposite direction a long time ago, becoming one with the sword and breaking through the sky if he could just cancel the force in a certain direction. This kind of extremely restrictive tactic was naturally not the result of a flash of inspiration at the last moment. Instead, it was the result of a long period of thought and a sudden burst of energy. Before he was plotted against and put into his treasure chest, Wang Lu had actually deeply recognized the flaws of the non-phase sword. Unless he could be like his master, who could easily expand his non-phase sword defense to hundreds of meters, thousands of meters, or even more, otherwise, once he was confined and restricted, he would not be able to exert his strength and would lose without a fight. In order to solve this predicament, the only way was to borrow strength. However, Wang Lu did not have a mature plan on how to operate it. Previously, Wang Lu only had a hazy idea to offset the force and fall infinitely, but it had not been perfected yet. However, when he was really in a predicament, the flash of thinking fiercely broke out, which allowed him to make the right response in the first place. And this ability was the biggest factor that supported him to be undefeated since his debut. The Wang Yue siblings were defeated in a sorry state. The younger brother, Wang Yuelwanyun, had a relatively light injury. He pulled his sister's hand and prepared to escape. However, when he turned around, he felt that his sister was stuck in the same place and refused to move. "Sister, what are you doing?" While speaking, Wang Yuelwanyun anxiously looked at the spinning ball of light in midair. That was Wang Lu using a special way to counteract the violent momentum of him breaking through the wall of the box. And when his momentum was exhausted and stabilized again, it would be the time for the two of them to face a disaster. Were it not for the sneak attack just now, the two siblings were far from Wang Lu's opponent. Even though they were already considered as elite disciples in Xingjing's sect, compared to the lead disciple, there was still a world of difference. There was no chance of winning in a head-on fight. "We can't go," Wang Yuelwanyu said in a sinking voice and shook off her brother's hand. "Sister, wake up, don't be blinded by hatred." Wang Yuelwanyu softly said, "This has nothing to do with hatred. Senior brother Jianglu left us here, giving us the task to delay Wang Lu for at least an hour. However, we have only delayed him for less than half an hour. This is not good." Wang Yuelwanyun anxiously said, "So what? We have tried our best. There's no point in staying here, we will only get ourselves into trouble. Just now, when we delayed Wang Lu, most of the troops have already gone down Harmony River. At this time, they should have already reached their destination. Wang Lu is not known for his speed, so he can't catch up. Then senior brother Jianglu should have told us that half an hour is enough. Previously, when he said 1 hour, there must be a reason. When Wang Yuelwanyu was defeated, her mind was actually very clear. Not to mention, it's not that there's no way to stop him. Although the strength gap is really big, in fact, we are all peak shoot on stage, so we are still in the same realm. As long as we are willing to pay the price, nothing is absolute." Listening to his sister, how could Wang Yuelwanyun, as her younger brother, not understand? Suddenly, he was aghast. "Sister, you don't want to perish together with him, right? It's not perishing together. After all, this is the immortal dreamland, so we have the last insurance. At most, the next few years of cultivation will be a bit bumpy. Well, when I refine the yin and yang treasure chest with you, it's inevitable that I'll be a bit of a burden, I'm sorry." With that, Wang Yuelwanyu floated up and quietly flew toward the still spinning Wang Lu on Harmony River. This time, the woman didn't have the slightest anger. She was unprecedentedly calm, maintaining the best posture to face this unprecedentedly powerful enemy. This time, it had nothing to do with personal grievances, but for senior brother Jianglu, senior sister Qianghua, the entire team, and even Xingjing's sect. Wang Yuelwanyu was not the best cultivator. Her talent and perception were between first-rate and second-rate. If not because she and Wang Yuelwanyun could hold the yin and yang treasure chest together, she would not even be qualified to be selected into the 36-people team of senior sister Qianghua. However, in the face of the most powerful opponent on the same level as her, her heart was surprisingly calm. "Wang Lu, you're really, really powerful. Perhaps from now on, even seeing your back is an extravagant hope, but at least at this moment, I can definitely stop you, so that you have no time to come back to rescue me. At least this time, I will definitely win." With a strong determination, Wang Yuelwanyu began to try to melt her immortal heart and combine it with the magical power in her jade mansion. Of course, she only melted a small part. If she melted more, even if she had an insurance measure, it would still be a dead end. Then, she fused the magical power with the essence of her immortal heart and turned it into a viscous net, which then covered Wang Lu's head. Taking advantage of the fact that Wang Lu hasn't completely digested his momentum, she firmly locked him in this place with this limitless sky net that surpassed shoot on stage. As long as she could delay him for half an hour, her task would be declared a success, and she had the confidence to complete this task. However, when the heavenly net fell, the amazing scene made Wang Yuelwanyu dumbfounded. The golden ball disappeared. In front of Wang Yuelwanyu's eyes, that crazily spinning golden ball suddenly disappeared like a phantom. However, the limitless sky net didn't touch anything. It just quietly fell on the surface of the water and spread out. This. Wang Yuelwanyu's mind went blank, and her whole body could not stop trembling. Because she had understood everything. Wang Lu had already left. When he broke through the yin and yang treasure chest, he didn't use the spinning to offset the momentum, but instead, he directly used this high speed to fly toward the capital city downstream of Harmony River. What was left in the same place was basically an illusion, and he himself had cast a spell of invisibility, which allowed him to leave without anyone noticing. The illusion and invisibility should be completed at the moment when he broke through the treasure chest. Wang Lu's timing was very clever. At that time, when the Wang Yue siblings suffered the backlash from the treasure chest, their primordial spirit was in a trance, so they completely didn't notice Wang Lu's trick. And Wang Lu was indeed worthy to be the lead disciple of Spirit Sword Sect. While his swordsmanship was superb, his spell attainment was also quite profound. However, even if she understood all of this, it was already useless. The spell that Wang Yuelwanyu released with great awareness was basically meaningless. After a long silence, Wang Yuelwanyu suddenly felt that she was seeing stars, and the whole world began to distort and collapse. She let out a muffled groan, and black blood gushed out from her 7 orifices. She could no longer support her body and fell from the sky. Really troublesome. At the same time, Wang Lu, who was flying at the highest speed on his flying sword, had long left those 2 small fries behind him. With the IQ of those 2 people, 1 illusion and 1 invisibility was enough to deal with it. The real difficulty was still behind him. Being locked in the treasure chest was a mistake. Although he quickly escaped by relying on a strange fighting method, it still wasted a lot of time. During this period, Xingjing's sect team would inevitably seize the opportunity to go down the river. Then, Zhou Mumu and the others would be in big trouble. Everyone was the lead disciple of the 5 uniques, but not everyone was like him, good at fighting against many and having perfect defense. He had the courage to face the whole team of Xingjing's sect alone, but other people had no such possibility. Especially senior sister Zhou Mumu, she was actually not good at fighting. Once she was sneak attacked, she didn't have a strong survival ability. Although before she left, he had already reminded her that she shouldn't be too caught off guard, but forget it, it's useless to think too much now. A professional should have a professional mentality. When I arrive at the scene, I'll do my best. Wang Lu frowned, and then extracted more magical power from his jade mansion and poured it into the sword of Mount Kun, making the flying speed faster. Before long, the capital city located downstream of Harmony River finally appeared in his field of vision. Looking from a distance, it was still a peaceful and bustling scene. Wang Lu's worry had not been reduced. The scene before him was not necessarily a good thing. Xingjing's sect team must have been here for some time, but the whole city unexpectedly had no response to them. Where should he start next? Just as Wang Lu stopped for a moment and fell into thought, suddenly a loud explosion sounded in the city. In a Ye's residence, a transparent glass wall was broken. Countless pieces of distorted light fragments rustled down, and a red mist diffused out from the hole. Wang Lu's heart trembled. That red mist was clearly a Ye's blood-marked divine spear. Chapter 407. The blood-marked divine spear was a Ye's strongest killing move. Its power was unparalleled. One spear could defeat the golden-clad army of Golden City. Of course, the price was not cheap. Each time it was used, it would consume a blood mark, and the preciousness of the blood mark was needless to say. For a Yi to use the blood-marked divine spear at this time, the situation was obviously very unfavorable. The periphery of the mansion was covered by a spell, so that for a long time, the entire city did not respond to all of this. When Wang Lu landed into the mansion from the air, he found that the situation was even worse than expected. Ye's exquisite small home was only left with broken tiles and debris. The traces of spell wreaking havoc were everywhere in the mansion. More than 10 Xingjing sect cultivators were lying unconscious in the courtyard. There were less than 10 people scattered around, struggling to maintain their standing posture, but they were already an arrow at the end of its flight. There were only a few people who could really maintain their combat power. The entire team was almost paralyzed. However, the situation of the opponents of Xingjing's sect was even worse. Zhou Mumu's face was pale as she half knelt on the ground. Her diamond ring was mottled with blood. Although her life was not in danger, she no longer had the power to fight. Zhang Zai transformed into a thunderbolt, but the light was dim. Obviously, he only had the ability to erupt once or twice. In the field, only Yi was still in his peak state. Holding the blood-marked divine spear, he stood in the center with a murderous aura all over his body. No one dared to approach within a radius of 10 meters around him. However, from the horrible scars on his body, it could be seen that his state would not last long. The blood-marked divine spear could be said to be the deterrent of helplessness. In fact, Yi simply did not have the power to completely release the blood-marked divine spear. At this time, the blood mark on the spear was indeed only a deterrent. And then there were the two people in the worst condition. Sacred Leaf Shaman was lying in a pool of blood. On her waist, there was a ghastly wound that almost cut her in half. Fortunately, Zhang Zai was by her side, trying his best to squeeze out some magical power to stabilize her injury. However, the situation was still not optimistic. The Lord of Grey Mountain was in a desperate situation. The young girl stood in the corner of the courtyard. Behind her was a mountain of building wreckage, and in front of her was the heavy shield. The young girl held the shield in her hand, and her gaze was solemn and serious. However, this posture did not help to improve her situation at all. There were 5 Xingjing sect people gathered around her. Although 3 of them were injured, she was afraid that she could not contend against any one of them. Not to mention one of them had a sturdy build and was dressed in extraordinary clothes. Perhaps he was the leader of this Xingjing sect team. When Wang Lu arrived, he saw such a scene that could be called as the end of the situation. Before he could think of what to say, someone in the field sneered. It was the leader who was as sturdy as a bull. Wang Lu, you're finally here? Oh, Jiang Lu. Upon hearing the voice, Wang Lu recognized his identity. When they first confronted each other in the ancient sword tomb, Power King Jianglu left a deep impression on him. As an inner court disciple of Xingjing sect, he led his team to suppress the whole field. Even the lead disciple of Kunlun sect, Zhou Mumu, was endlessly depressed. Even though there was the factor that Zhou Mumu was not good at fighting, Jianglu's formidable strength was also evident. After a long time, the opponent that was difficult to contend with in a head-on fight seemed to be nothing now. However, Jianglu obviously didn't intend to confront Wang Lu head-on. When Wang Lu appeared, while talking to Wang Lu, he secretly made a gesture to his companion. Kill that young girl Lan at all costs. And Wang Lu also became aware of Jianglu's intention at the same time. Although he didn't know why Jianglu was so obsessed with a young girl of Grey Mountain who had already lost her master's identity, but since it was supported by the enemy, Wang Lu naturally had to oppose it. Therefore, he immediately flew on his flying sword, trying to bypass Xingjing sect people to come to Lan's side. However, how could Jianglu let him get what he wanted? His huge body was like a strong barrier, which blocked in front of Wang Lu in advance. Wang Lu's non-phase sword was good at defense but not good at breaking through. Thus, the trajectory of his flying sword was very little. Wang Lu found that he was intercepted by Jianglu and could not change the direction to bypass him. Therefore, he immediately launched his non-phase sword, trying to use the nameless sword to rebound the momentum and collapse Jianglu. However, when the sword of Mount Kun touched Jianglu's body, the place where the force came from was empty, which made him extremely uncomfortable. He wanted to move forward, but in front of him, there seemed to be an astonishingly elastic viscous network. And when he wanted to rebound, he found that the resistance had disappeared without a trace. After not seeing each other for a long time, Wang Lu was not the only one who had made progress. That power king Jianglu who won with brute force at the beginning had already mastered his power to the finest detail. In his first head-on confrontation with Wang Lu, he actually didn't fall into a disadvantageous position by relying on this power transformation technique. However, it was only for this moment that he didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. Seeing that the simple impact was ineffective, Wang Lu immediately changed his sword momentum. The incomparably firm and fierce non-phase sword also became soft and ethereal, and the sword momentum was uncertain. And in the face of such an impact, it was impossible for Jianglu to win by change. However, to be able to stop him for a moment was enough. Goodbye, lead disciple of Spirit Sword Sect. With a faint smile, Jianglu used his thick palm to meet Wang Lu's sword. Wang Lu was startled, thinking, is this guy courting death? It was true that Jianglu's physical strength was almost unparalleled among his peers, but in a head-on collision with non-phase sword, he had no chance of winning. Or did he have the confidence to deal with him before the head-on collision? With a trace of doubt, Wang Lu's sword momentum became firmer. The sword of Mount Kun stabbed Jianglu's palm, and then the two extremely powerful forces violently collided. Then, Wang Lu looked at everything that happened in front of him. Jianglu's palm collided with the sword of Mount Kun, and his well-tempered arm, under the absolute crushing force, twisted, broke, and disintegrated. Blood, flesh, bones, all crumbled into powder, and then were crushed into even finer pieces that could not be seen with the naked eye. The expression on Jianglu's face changed from calm to extremely painful, and then to shock and confusion, as if he couldn't accept the result in front of him. However, with his strength, wasn't this the inevitable result of a head-on collision with non-phase sword? What did he have to be unconvinced about? What the hell are you guys doing? After a brief confrontation, Jianglu roared in pain and staggered back. His entire right arm disappeared without a trace, and even the right side of his chest muscles were completely broken. His injury was extremely heavy. However, he was more concerned about the situation behind him. And behind him, the four Xingjing sect cultivators each took out their magical weapon and poured their strongest magical power into it, going all out to suppress a shield-wielding girl. With their strength, the girl should have died on the spot without the slightest resistance. However, at this time, with the shield in her hand, her posture was as straight as a pine tree, and even her breathing rhythm didn't change. However, the complexion of the four Xingjing sect cultivators turned red, and their breathing stagnated. They even had no time to respond to Jianglu's question. Regarding this scene, Wang Lu was also full of curiosity. What are you guys doing? Isn't it obvious? On the other side of the courtyard, Zhou Mumu barely adjusted her breathing and then hoarsely said, as long as you kill Lan, it's tantamount to you being expelled. Wang Lu was startled. What's the reason for this? What does it have to do with me if she dies? As soon as this remark came out, everyone's eyes focused on him. Obviously, Wang Lu had asked an incomparably stupid question. After realizing this, Wang Lu furrowed his brows. Could it be that, as my summoner, once she dies, she will implicate me? But I've already lifted the master-follower relationship with her. TSK, could it be that the master-follower relationship has a deeper connection? Zhou Mumu wryly smiled. Junior brother Wang Lu, this 5 blood spirit crown competition is really too disadvantageous to you. It doesn't give you any time to collect information, so you don't even know this most basic rule. The 5 of us are essentially summoned by this world's 5 blood spirit crown. The master-follower relationship with the summoner is determined by the world's law, not just by relying on the blood marks. Once the master dies, as the follower, we will immediately be expelled from this world, and the blood spirit power in our body will also fall into the hands of others. So that's how it is. After listening to this, Wang Lu nodded in understanding, and then said, in that case, the action of Xingjing sect people is easy to understand. They don't have the confidence to win against me, so they locked their target on Lan. It's just that, no one expected that Lan, who was supposed to be the weakest, suddenly became stronger, so that they fell short of success. While speaking, he had already arrived at Lan's side. Unfolding his non-phase sword defense, the 4 Xingjing sect cultivators screamed in unison. Each of them was seriously injured by the backlash of their life source magical weapon. When they fell down, their eyes were filled with unwillingness. As Wang Lu said, the action of Xingjing sect people was almost successful, but they fell short of success. They launched a surprise attack at the best time, which seriously injured Sacred Leaf Shaman and took this opportunity to exhaust Zhang Zai's magical power. Zhou Mumu was an unexpected factor. She shouldn't have come back so soon, which brought great variables to the action. However, Power King Jianglu's response was very timely, besieging Wei to rescue Zhao Zhao, attacking a Yi. Sure enough, because of Shaman's serious injury, a Yi lost his mind and launched an attack with the attitude of mutual destruction. After paying a certain price, Xingjing sect people relied on their powerful burst to almost kill a Yi. In order to save a Yi, Zhou Mumu had no choice but to throw herself in and was seriously injured. In this way, the only one left was Lan, who had no influence on the situation. This young master of Grey Mountain was the weakest, which was not news in this world. For the sake of safety, Xingjing sect people left her as the last to be dealt with. Then, Wang Lu returned ahead of time, but he was stopped by Jianglu for a moment. As long as they took this opportunity to kill Lan, the whole action would be perfect. However, in this last round, Xingjing sect people lost the game. No one thought that the weakest girl could actually contend with the full strength of the 4 Xingjing sect elites. If she had this kind of strength, who would dare to look down on her? You waste, how did you become so strong? The most surprised one was a Yi, who had always despised the girl. He propped up his body with his spear and asked with difficulty. The girl said very rationally and boldly. Because I'm full. Chapter 408. Food is the god of the people. It was not until this time that Wang Lu deeply understood the true meaning of this ancient saying that had been passed down in the world of mortals. Because I'm full. A simple sentence could make the publicly recognized waste young master of Grey Mountain, in just half a day, be reborn and become a powerhouse that could easily withstand the pressure of 4 elite Xingjing sect cultivators. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, it would be hard for anyone to believe it. However, this incredible scene did indeed happen. At this time, thinking about it, Grey Mountain was able to be comparable to Golden City in the past. Naturally, there was a reason. If this kind of heaven and earth devouring divine ability was displayed to the extreme, its power might be called heaven-defying. At the same time, there was also an explanation as to why Grey Mountain would fall to this point. No matter how rich you are, you can't afford to eat like this. In the past, the most powerful force that was tied with Golden City was, in fact, eaten until it collapsed. Fortunately, after Lan emptied a Ye's warehouse, she was reborn and didn't waste food in vain. Instead, it caused a chain reaction, which made the whole scene undergo a huge change. Xingjing sect team fell short of success, and their initiative was completely lost. They didn't even succeed in killing any of the important figures, so they had no choice but to launch the talisman to evacuate, lest everyone fall into the enemy's hands. The price of this emergency evacuation was also quite heavy. In order to avoid the interference of Zhang Zai, Zhou Mumu, and the other 2 lead disciples, the 10 elite disciples of Xingjing sect had to forcibly launch the talisman at the cost of their own lives. Then, they were expelled from the immortal dreamland, resulting in a permanent reduction of members. However, the elites of the team were finally saved. The seriously injured Jianglu and several other key disciples were sent away. Otherwise, in this battle alone, Xingjing's sect team would have wasted half of their strength. After Xingjing's sect team left, the seriously injured people on the field could no longer hold on. One by one, they fell to the ground with a deep sense of dejection on their faces. This battle was really tragic. Xingjing's sect team no doubt suffered heavy losses, but the three-way alliance was also defeated even though they won. 2 lead disciples of the 5 uniques and 3 masters of the 5 spirits were defeated by Xingjing's sect team, and from the beginning to the end, Qianghua herself didn't even show up. What if this raid was led by Qianghua? If Qianghua was present, even if Wang Lu was not separated, could his non-phase sword block Qianghua? Xingjing's sect team was really too strong. Previously, they had never faced this team head-on, so they didn't accurately estimate the strength of this team. They originally thought that although their comprehensive strength was strong, without the help of Golden City, it would be very difficult for them to confront the 2 huge organizations, Harmony River and Eternal Tree. However, Xingjing's sect team crushed the opponent's plan with a precise surprise attack. Perhaps Xingjing's sect team was indeed unable to contend against the 2 huge forces, but when they were determined to behead the other side, even the three-way alliance could not resist them. In front of the 2 lead disciples and the 3 leaders of the 5 spirits, they crippled their opponents. Such a terrifying strength advantage simply made people unable to see the hope of victory. Thinking of this, even Wang Lu fell into silence, and Lan's sudden outburst seemed to be overshadowed. Only Yi appeared to be full of energy. Although the king of Harmony River was seriously injured and couldn't even stand up, his monstrous anger still filled the courtyard. It was obvious that he was extremely unwilling to accept the outcome of the battle just now. This group of lowly bastards, the next time I meet them, I'll tear them to pieces. As he spoke, a strong smell of blood filled the air, which showed that Ye's injury was more serious than it looked. Enough, don't talk anymore, just focus on recuperating. Zhou Mumu frowned and interrupted Ye's curse. Usually, once Zhou Mumu opened her mouth, Yi would quickly back down. However, this time, Yi actually turned around and fiercely glared at her with his blood-red eyes. Is now the time to recuperate? Being talked back to by Yi, Zhou Mumu's anger rose. Otherwise, what else can you do? Should he run to Golden City and throw away his life? If you want to die, that's your business, but don't implicate me. I heard that you're also the lead disciple of a big force in the Blood Spirit Temple. Then you should know how humiliating it is to be sneak attacked at home and hurt my wife and child. If I can't wipe out this shame as soon as possible, then I'm a man in vain. As Yi finished his words one word at a time, he actually stood up with the support of his spear and staggered toward the outside of the courtyard. Hey, do you really want to die? I know you like to show off, but no matter how you dress up a corpse, you can't be handsome. No one is going to die. As Yi said that, his pace became more and more stable. With each step, the blood on his body was shaken off a bit, and his broken leather armor and coat were also slowly repaired by his magical power. When he reached the door, they were already as good as new. Of course, people with discerning eyes could see that this was just pretending to be relaxed. His internal injury was heavy, so how could it be so easy to recover? Even if he was the master of water spirit, his resilience could not be so strong. However, Yi finally walked out of the courtyard in a perfect posture. At this time, many people in the city had heard the news, but they all gathered outside the courtyard and no one dared to come in. Seeing Yi going out, people crowded around him, talking all at once to inquire about what happened. Most of them had yet to realize that a fierce battle had taken place in the courtyard. Their king had almost lost his life, and once Yi died, under the background of the 5 spirits' power struggle, it would be difficult for all the people of Harmony River to escape. However, at this time, they were just curious about why there was such a loud noise coming from Ye's house and why there was a blood mist spreading. When Yi came out of the door, he put on a bright smile. Ha ha ha, don't worry, it's nothing. I'm teaching a lesson to my disobedient blood spirit, ha ha ha. As soon as Yi said this, it immediately caused a roar of laughter. Because Yi had never put on airs, the people of Harmony River boldly teased, Did you get taught a lesson by your disobedient blood spirit again? A Yi snorted. What a joke. How could she teach me a lesson? This kind of argument, which obviously lacked evidence and momentum, immediately attracted a burst of boos. Of course, most of the boos were jokes. The people loved and respected this king who did not put on airs, and they also trusted his strength. His weakness in front of followers did not harm his reputation. After a Yi and the onlookers laughed and joked around for a while, the crowd gradually dispersed. No one wanted to take up too much of a Ye's time. Everyone knew that during the Five Blood Spirits crown struggle, he was far from being as leisurely as he appeared. However, there were still a few people who stayed in place. Seeing them, a Ye's expression also sank. A Yi pointed out two people from the crowd. You two, each share half of the burden for me. The two people looked like ordinary people that could be seen everywhere in the 3 cities of Harmony River. Their stature, appearance, and even temperament were ordinary. At this time, being pointed out by a Yi, they both raised their heads, but their eyes revealed a brilliance that did not belong to mortals. Yes. The two people nodded in surprise and each stretched out a hand to a Yi. While holding the hands of the two people, a Yi sighed. I never thought that one day I still have to rely on your strength. This is not handsome at all. The two of them smiled and said, if we can't do anything for our king for the rest of our lives, it will be our shame. So, just treat it as a way for us to be handsome for once. Please use this power to your heart's content. As soon as their voice fell, 2 groups of black and red spheres gushed out from a Ye's chest and flowed into the two people's bodies through his arms. The next moment, the two people uttered a muffled groan, black blood gushed out from their 7 apertures, and then they slumped down. However, a Yi glowed with an astonishing momentum, without the slightest trace of injury. This move startled everyone present. Obviously, a Yi had exchanged vitality with those two people, transferring his own injuries to other people, allowing himself to recover from his weakened state after the battle to become full of vigor and vitality. It was just that this kind of divine skill was unheard of before. Even Zhou Mumu, the spirit of water, had never heard of it. To be able to become an overlord in this world, no one was a simple character. Lan had the Fudi divine skill, a Yi had the great blood transfusion method, and as for shaman, perhaps she also had an unknown divine skill. It was just that, in a short period of time, there was no way to see it. After transferring his injury, a Yi looked back at the courtyard that had been reduced to ruins and his still unconscious wife. With a complicated look in his eyes, he shook his head, picked up his spear, and was about to leave. Zhou Mumu looked back at Wang Lu, but found that Wang Lu had no intention to stop him. She was annoyed, but she also realized that although they were temporarily cooperating, they were still in a competitive relationship. Some things couldn't be counted on others. However, she also knew that it was impossible for her to stop a Ye's revenge, so she had to earnestly exhort, remember, don't try to be brave, your life does not belong to you alone. Rest assured, I never try to be brave. A Yi smiled. Because people who try to be brave are not handsome at all. A Yi did not lie. He indeed did not try to be brave alone to throw away his life. In the next half a month, alone, he repeatedly went deep into the territory of Golden City. With the spear in his hand, he killed 15 celestial generals and hundreds of celestial soldiers, and drove 3 Xingjing sect cultivators out of the immortal dreamland. During this period, it was completely a sneak attack. In each action, he quietly lurked in the dark, waiting for the enemy to completely relax their guard. Then, his deadly spear would pierce the enemy's vital point, and after that, he would immediately escape. He never provoked an enemy that was too powerful. Each action was very cautious. Before he made his move, he would repeatedly confirm his retreat route. Like a skilled and ruthless hunter, he completed the hunt again and again. The spear, this kind of tool, first appeared to hunt wild animals, and the king of Harmony River, who used the spear as his weapon, was essentially an excellent hunter. It was just that, according to his temperament, he disdained to use his hunting skills to slaughter the weak. He preferred to have a one-on-one duel with a powerful local leader. However, the surprise attack of Xingjing's sect team made him abandon his hobby and incarnate into a hunter in the dark, setting off a terrifying wave again and again in the territory of Golden City. From the results of the battle, Ye's revenge was quite successful. In addition to weakening Golden City and Xingjing's sect team, his many successful assassinations further enlarged the gap between the two, so that Xingjing's sect team had no time to carry out any action against Harmony River and Eternal Tree. However, from another point of view, when Yi went out to fight, there were signs of instability in his backyard. Chapter 409. After the surprise attack by Xingjing's sect team, Sacred Leaf Shaman returned to her residence in Eternal Tree at the suggestion of her follower. Seriously injured, she needed a lot of wood element spiritual energy to recover. At the same time, the surprise attack in the center of Harmony River's capital city made it difficult for people to have confidence in the defense of Harmony River. The capital city of Harmony River was no doubt prosperous, but the open structure of the three cities, as well as Ye's complete lack of awareness as a king, made his capital city appear to be riddled with holes in the war era, allowing people to infiltrate. Perhaps Shaman herself had no opinion on this, but after careful analysis, Zhanzai felt that this place was not safe at all. Wang Lu's original idea of going to the upper reaches of Harmony River alone to intercept them was correct. Unfortunately, Wang Yue's siblings used their treasure chest to isolate him and thus failed to stop Xingjing's sect team. However, the key point was that Wang Lu only walked along the river, but he already saw the offensive and defensive points of Harmony River. Yi had been a king for so many years, why couldn't he think of setting up checkpoints in the key areas? Allying with such a person really made people a bit more careful. Therefore, under the strong request of Zhanzai, Shaman had to leave Harmony River and return to her hometown. Eternal Tree was a towering tree. Before actually visiting it, it was hard for people to imagine that it would be so huge. This giant tree was located at the end of the lower reaches of Harmony River. Its trunk spanned across both sides of the river. It was taller and more majestic than any mountain in this world. Its canopy was completely hidden above the clouds, blotting out the sky and the sun. It was said that half of the light in this world came from the fluorescent insects that lived in the canopy. When the time came, the fluorescent insects flew out of their habitat, and it would be daytime under Eternal Tree. In the resting room of the fluorescent insects, it would be night. Legend has it that Eternal Tree supported the sky and the earth in this world. If Eternal Tree collapsed, the whole world would be destroyed. However, no matter how powerful a creature was, it was impossible to destroy this tree. Therefore, it was named Eternal Tree. In this sacred and eternal tree lived hundreds of millions of creatures. These creatures built their own cities in the tree. In the most central place was the residence of Sacred Leaf. It was the place where she meditated and dealt with various affairs. However, when the current Sacred Leaf married the king of Harmony River, she spent most of her time in Harmony River and rarely lived in Eternal Tree. When Shaman returned to the Eternal Tree under the protection of Zhanzai, her restless mood suddenly calmed down. Shaman thought that she had been accustomed to the dense water vapor above Harmony River for many years, but in the end, this place surrounded by green leaves was more suitable for her. In the following days, while Yi repeatedly went in and out of Golden City, Shaman concentrated on recuperating. In the surprise attack of Xingjing's sect team, the pressure on Shaman and her follower was actually the greatest. Because Shaman not only had to take care of herself and Yi, she also had to take care of the two children who had no fighting power at all. Her power was divided into 4 parts, and Xingjing's sect suddenly concentrated fire on her. If not for Zhanzai's timely response, Shaman would have died on the spot. Speaking of which, this is all thanks to you. On the sickbed, Shaman's face already had some color, but compared with her original dignified and elegant posture, she still looked haggard. The woman quietly breathed the quiet air of the Eternal Tree and adjusted her body little by little. Zhanzai accompanied her quietly by her bedside. He was reading a book woven from leaves with great interest. Hearing Shaman mention him, Zhanzai said without raising his head, you and I suffer together. If you die, I will immediately be expelled. On the contrary, even if I am expelled, if you can persist until the end and get the 5 blood spirit crown, I can still share the benefits. Therefore, based on this simple logic, it is natural for me to help you. Shaman tilted her head and swept Zhang Zai with her watery eyes. You're really a strange person. Given the average IQ and level of academic civilization on your side, I can understand your evaluation of me. Zhang Zai casually replied and continued to turn the pages of the book in his hand. It was just that, while reading, he couldn't help but sneer at the corner of his mouth. Shaman curiously asked, "Is there any problem? Why don't you ask me the other way around?" "What's the problem?" Zhang Zai said, closed the book, and then asked, "Do you usually cultivate these spells?" Shaman said, "This is the inheritance of Eternal Tree, enough. No wonder Eternal Tree has such a favorable location, yet it can't be ranked in the top 3 in this world." Zhang Zai unceremoniously commented, "A messy spell system, an inheritance that doesn't seek to advance, it's really a reckless waste of natural resources. I saw that your attainment in spells was good and thought that you should have a good inheritance and growth potential. But looking at you, if you want to get the 5 blood spirit crown, it's simply a joke." Shaman froze for a moment and then said with a magnanimous smile, "Originally, I didn't," Zhang Zai said, "Originally, I didn't expect to take the crown alone. Wake up, I don't know how optimistic you are about the King of Harmony River, but he can't persist until the end." Shaman said, "You don't know him," Zhang Zai coldly said, "You don't know Wang Lu either. You don't know who we will face in the end. Wang Lu. That earth spirit? He is indeed powerful, but you don't know how powerful he really is." Zhang Zai said, "Our biggest enemy is Golden City, but our last enemy must be Wang Lu, the winner of the 5 blood spirit crown. Therefore, sooner or later, we have to face him. If we want to win, we must not relax our vigilance against him. And the Yi will never raise his vigilance against him." Thinking of a Ye's temper, Shaman could only helplessly smile. A Yi can't be counted on, and Zhou Mumu also can't be counted on. Therefore, in the end, targeting Wang Lu is your task. Unfortunately, now it seems that you might as well just directly surrender. Zhang Zai indignantly said this, but then he immediately changed his words. "No, we can't just give up like this. How about this, when you recuperate, I will reorganize the spell system for you. If you reconstruct the spell system according to my method, perhaps you can still be saved." That's settled. Upon hearing this, Shaman was dumbfounded. She had summoned this wood element blood spirit for some time, but she didn't know that he was actually such an arrogant and even lawless person. However, when she thought of these past few days when she was seriously injured, his meticulous care, and especially that day when she was attacked by Xingjing sect people, Zhang Zai risked his life to rescue her. Shaman couldn't get angry. Therefore, she had to tactfully say, "I respect your strength and insight as a blood spirit. It's just that, the inheritance of Eternal Tree for thousands of years has its own profound mystery." Zhang Zai sneered. You want to say that my strength is not necessarily better than yours, so what qualification do I have to look down on your inheritance? That's what I thought at first, but I've been reading your legacy manuals these past few days, and I've finally confirmed one thing: your legacy system is complete bullsh*t. Who knows how lucky you are to have your current level of cultivation. Of course, even if I say it, you won't believe it. Therefore, I will demonstrate it to you so that you will be convinced." With that, he stood up, and a green light bloomed in the palm of his right hand. A crystal clear seed condensed and formed in the void. A moment later, the outer shell burst open, and a young sapling drilled out and quickly grew to the height of a person. Zhang Zai bent down and threw the sapling in his hand down. The roots and branches of the sapling contracted and bent, and then unexpectedly turned into human limbs. Several roots intertwined together and became a pair of powerful legs to support it. This is, Shaman's eyes widened in disbelief. She subconsciously wanted to stand up from the sickbed, but the injury in her body stopped her, causing her to groan in pain and lie back down. Zhang Zai lightly said, "This is the guardian tree spirit of your eternal tree that has been passed down for thousands of years. How about it? It can freely use the essence of eternal tree to shape life. According to the ancient records, I now have the rank of golden leaf, only one step away from sacred leaf. Then, Lord Sacred Leaf, tell me, even if you are in good condition, can you do the same thing as me?" Shaman's face was heavy and she was speechless. Guardian Tree Spirit was not a difficult spell, but even if she was a sacred leaf, she could not do it as easily as Zhang Zai. And the real problem was, Zhang Zai did not get the inheritance of Eternal Tree. Although he was a wood element blood spirit, his cultivation method was heterogeneous, which had nothing to do with Eternal Tree. How could he use the essence of Eternal Tree to shape life? This completely deviated from the basic principle of Eternal Tree. I have the 10,000 methods comprehension. Unless the aptitude requirement is very strict, there is no spell in the world that I can't learn and use. It's funny that this magical ability has never worked on the cultivation method that I really care about, such as Wang Lu's non-phase method, Zhu Shiyao's stellar sword. However, your Eternal Tree's 10,000 years of inheritance seems to be just so. Shaman was still dumbfounded. Her heart was so shaken that she didn't know what to say. Zhang Zai smiled. "However, compared to you, I just have a better master, which is nothing to be proud of. Moreover, from another point of view, to be able to cultivate to your current level with such a rough inheritance, your aptitude is indeed commendable." With that, Zhang Zai's face turned serious. "So, I hope you can seriously follow my footsteps. We don't have much time, so we should improve a little bit." Shaman was silent for a long time. Finally, she bit her lip and nodded. Eternal Tree, outside the residence of Sacred Leaf, a cheerful voice suddenly broke the silence. "Ha ha ha, Senior Brother Zai, I'm here to play with you again." Wait a minute, unfortunately, the person who came kicked the door open and then stood dumbfounded in front of the door. Inside the room, Lord Sacred Leaf and her follower were sitting on the sickbed. The two held each other's hands, their faces were flushed, and their bodies were covered with fine sweat, and then, they were naked. Seeing this spectacle, Wang Lu froze for a moment at the door. Then, under the shocked eyes of the master and follower, he quietly closed the door and turned away. "Wait, don't go." Shaman's panicked voice came from behind him. "Don't go? Stay and have fun together?" Wang Lu sneered. "I'm not going to lie to you." Chapter 410. In short, it's not what you think. After stopping Wang Lu with a powerful means and coaxing him back to Sacred Leaf residence, Zhang Zai pondered for a long time and then opened his mouth to say something. Wang Lu, who was invited back to his residence by Zhang Zai's thunder body combination, listened to his words, pondered for a long time, and then frowned. "It's not what I think." Sacred Leaf Shaman, who had already changed her clothes, still had a blush on her face. With some difficulty, she softly said, "I know that scene just now is very easy to misunderstand, but it's really not what you think." Wang Lu looked at Shaman with some surprise. "Even you say that?" With that, Wang Lu fell into contemplation and then softly said, "I thought that you two were comparing notes with each other in order to speed up your healing, or maybe Senior Brother Zai was helping you sort out your cultivation method. But since you said that it's not what I think, it seems that a Yes Green Hat King can't run away." Wait a minute. Zhang Zai was stunned. "You actually thought that we were comparing notes in order to speed up our healing?" Wang Lu sighed. "Sure enough, it's too deviating from common sense, isn't it?" "No, I just think that, with your character, it's the biggest abnormality for you to actually say such a normal and reasonable conjecture." Zhang Zai was filled with emotion. "According to the analysis of the sect, your first reaction should be that the two of us are engaging in illicit affairs. Speaking of illicit affairs, Zhang Zai was a bit embarrassed. Shaman also blushed and turned her head away. Although the scene just now was indeed not her doing anything unkind to her husband, it was indeed too embarrassing. Wang Lu said, if it were any other man, would certainly think so. The problem is that the male cultivators of 10,000 Arts sect have always been destined to be alone for life, storing their yuanyang until death. Therefore, as the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect, of course, you can't do that kind of thing. You don't even need to guess. Zhang Zai's expression was complicated. Hearing you say that, I'm really not happy at all. Wang Lu said, not happy? Then let me rephrase it. Congratulations on successfully obtaining a brand new life experience with a beautiful young woman. I will help you cover up a yi. By the way, I also have a variety of secret medicines that Master left for me. Do you need some to liven things up? Forget it. I'm destined to be alone for the rest of my life. In short, why have you come to me this time? After reluctantly resolving the misunderstanding, Zhang Zai had to ask Wang Lu about his intentions. Although everything was just a misunderstanding, if he was really here to play, then don't blame me for falling out with him. Well, if you want to talk business. The main thing is to tell you two injured people to be careful. Xingjing's sect team may make a comeback. Zhang Zai's expression immediately turned serious. Xingjing sect people? What happened? To put it simply, the situation forced them to take action to prove their worth, said Wang Lu. Previously, their team raid was not inspired by Golden City. It was completely their own initiative, and this was very sensitive when the relationship between the two sides was in a stalemate. Because Golden City has its own strategic layout, they don't want anyone to complicate the issue. If Xingjing sect team had a brilliant result and successfully killed one or two of the 5 spirit masters, then they could return triumphantly with this achievement. At that time, even the master of Golden City would have nothing to say. Unfortunately, their result was not ideal. After paying a painful price, they couldn't bring any substantial results. Instead, they caused trouble for Golden City. Zhang Zai frowned. His analysis of the situation was somewhat slow, but Shaman has already understood all of this. Although a Yi and I have been seriously injured, Golden City is in an all-out war with Flaming Valley, so they can't spare more strength to expand the results. Therefore, seriously injuring us is meaningless to Golden City. On the contrary, a Ye's retaliation actually caused them to suffer a real loss. Wang Lu said, therefore, the master of Golden City is very angry at Xingjing sect team for acting on their own initiative, and if Xingjing sect team wants to save the situation, they must prove their own value. Now, they either accept the request of Golden City to enter the battlefield of Flaming Valley and fight head-on with that group of barbarians. Or they want to kill a Yi, or they want to target you. And among the three, to fight head-on with Flaming Valley is to bring about their own destruction. A Yi is elusive, so unless Qianghua personally comes forward, it's very difficult to catch him. Only you two, who can peacefully recuperate in the Eternal Tree, are the best targets. Shaman said, Eternal Tree is protected by the previous sacred leaves, so it's not as open as Harmony River, so there's no need to worry about our safety. Very well, as long as you don't worry. Wang Lu indifferently shrugged. Then I'll go, you guys continue. With that, Wang Lu flew away on his flying sword, leaving behind the master and follower of Sacred Leaf who were still somewhat at a loss. Just to remind us, he deliberately came here? Zhang Zai said, according to the data, Wang Lu has always done things unexpectedly, and it's difficult to use common sense to measure him. However, the data also shows that although his behavior is unpredictable, he rarely does useless things. This time, he came here. Speaking to this, Zhang Zai's face suddenly turned black, because he thought, could it be that Wang Lu predicted that in the process of him and Shaman rebuilding their foundation, there would be an awkward situation, so he deliberately came here to collect evidence? In the final analysis, in the 5 spirits power struggle, there was only one winner. Now that Golden City has gradually fallen into a quagmire and has shown signs of decline, the other several parties of the alliance would naturally inevitably shift their energy away from Golden City. Including himself, wasn't the reason why he was willing to spend time to train shaman in order to contend against Wang Lu? If at this time, Wang Lu told this news to a Yi, then, the consequences would be hard to predict. At least, in the handbook compiled by the sect elders, there was no record of how to deal with it. While he was thinking, suddenly, shaman behind him exclaimed, "My God! What's wrong?" Just now, when Wang Lu walked all the way to my door, I didn't hear any report. I originally thought that because he was holding the token, no one stopped him, but just now. Shaman said, and then felt that her throat was somewhat dry. Just now, when he left, I suddenly received an alarm from the Nightingale Sentinel, saying that someone without the token left the Eternal Tree and asked me how to deal with it. Zhang Zai gawked for a moment, and then said in surprise, "You mean, just now, he didn't hold the token, but sneaked all the way here?" "Indeed." Shaman sank her voice and said, "It's really an impressive lesson." While speaking, her face became more and more gloomy, because the Eternal Tree, which she thought was impregnable, had been proven to be full of flaws. If Xingjing sect people came back, she would not be safe at all. Zhang Zai's face was also very unsightly. Wang Lu's defensive ability was amazing, which was already a well-known fact. At present, among the cultivators of the same generation, except for Qianghua and a few others, no one had the confidence to break his sword defense. Even his thunder body was not enough. However, he had never heard that he had any specialty in other spells. He was just an ordinary inner court disciple, which was not outstanding at all. And now, it seemed that he had amazing attainments in stealth and concealment. Moreover, this was not the crux of the problem. What was the use of Wang Lu, a cultivator who was good at defense, to learn stealth and concealment? It was completely incompatible. Therefore, from a rational point of view, it could only be explained that the overall level of Wang Lu's spell attainment was far above the assessment. Damn it, just how strong is that guy going to become? And if she wanted to fight against the increasingly stronger Wang Lu, relying on herself alone was probably not enough. And in this world, the one who could help her. Zhang Zai turned to Shaman. His blazing eyes made the woman tremble. "Next, there's nothing to do here, it's time to leave." After leaving the Eternal Tree, Wang Lu greeted Lan, who had been waiting for a long time, and the two walked side by side. Lan somewhat strangely looked at Wang Lu. "You came all the way here just to throw the Eternal Tree token that was given to you by Sacred Leaf there?" Wang Lu said, "Anyway, I won't need it in the future, so I'll just return it to its original owner. Moreover, the tracking and positioning spell hidden on the token makes me very uncomfortable." "Oh." After listening to the explanation, the girl nodded and no longer asked. "By the way, I also want to see what those two people have been doing during this time." Although Zhang Zai is not the strongest and his worldly wisdom is also passable, his academic and research ability is unparalleled among his peers. With the Eternal Tree's heritage and Zhang Zai's wisdom, the Lord of Wood's spirit will make a leap and become an unprecedentedly strong enemy. Lan asked, "So, isn't it very dangerous?" Seeing Wang Lu somewhat curiously looking at her, Lan said, "They are the enemy. When the enemy becomes stronger, of course it's dangerous. For the Lord of the Grey Mountain, everything in the world seemed to be simple and easy to divide." She ate and drank well in a Ye's house and was warmly entertained by the husband and wife, but when she turned around, the enemy was still the enemy. However, this kind of temperament was actually to Wang Lu's liking. For a professional like him, a sentimental apologist was the real trouble. "It's indeed very dangerous, so I deliberately came to take a look. However, after seeing it, I have nothing to worry about. In some aspects, this master and follower pair are naive and cute. There's no need for me to make a move. When the time comes, they will collapse without a fight. Oh. The key problem now is Flaming Valley. How long can this barbarian kingdom, which has diverted more than 80% of Golden City's energy, persist? While speaking, Wang Lu revealed a dignified look. The real key to this five spirits power struggle was still Flaming Valley. Were it not for Flaming Valley falling into Zhang Zai's trick of driving the tiger to swallow the wolf and rashly starting a war with Golden City, how could the other three sects have this leisurely peace? However, the strength of Flaming Valley was, after all, far inferior to Golden City. Under this kind of all-out attack, how long could they persist? How long could the Sandpiper and Clam fight last? Right now, everyone is probably calculating when we will fall. North of Harmony River, above the barren scorched land, there was a towering mountain. Although it was not as indomitable as the eternal tree, its summit was still high in the clouds. In this mountain, there was a fire that would not go out for thousands of years. Legend has it that the ancient gods fell here, and their anger would never be extinguished. On the summit, a red creature was bathed in lava. That creature had a rough human shape, but there were bone spurs on its joints, and its fangs were turned outwards. Its ferocious appearance was like that of a ferocious beast. The boiling lava that could melt everything was like warm water to him, soaking in it as if it was malt syrup. I don't know how long Golden City has been the overlord of this world, so long that everyone is accustomed to it. Without thinking, they think that they are invincible. No one dares to challenge their throne. They even sneer at other challengers. However, they don't know that things change, and nothing is eternal. As he spoke, the burly man propped himself up with his hands and stood up in the lava, revealing his bare skin that was as red as flames. Lava flowed down his chest, further accentuating his sturdy and indestructible figure. Let the people of this world see the real power of Flaming Valley. My follower, you will be the commander-in-chief of the decisive battle army. All of my warriors will be under your command. Don't let me down. Yes. Next to the lava pool, a teenager with short black hair responded with a serious look and a straight posture. On his left cheek, there was a cross scar, which added a bit of vicissitudes to his still immature face. And that pair of eyes that only a warrior could have flashed with a palpitating light. Chapter 411. This is the battlefield between Golden City and Flaming Valley. It's really tragic. Several days later, Wang Lu and his follower left the Eternal Tree and went all the way north to the front line of the war between Golden City and Flaming Valley. As far as the eye could see, the land was scorched and the people were plunged into misery and suffering. Of course, this was not unusual. In this tragic battle between the first and second place, how could it be peaceful? The baptism of blood and fire was the only way. It's just that, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, this scene is really unexpected. Looking at the tens of thousands of rotting corpses on the cracked ground, Wang Lu's eyes were solemn, and then became more and more cold. I originally thought that Golden City and Flaming Valley were evenly matched, and Golden City might be a bit stronger. However, according to the situation of the battlefield, out of 10 corpses, 9 of them are actually from Golden City. Are the soldiers of Flaming Valley actually this elite? As Wang Lu walked on the lifeless battlefield, his eyes constantly swept across the corpses around him, and then he deduced the details of the war from the traces left on the battlefield. He was not a warrior skilled in battle. After cultivating for so many years, although he had experienced many big and small wars, he never really became a warrior. Therefore, deducing the course of the war from the traces left on the battlefield was actually not easy. However, with his powerful computing ability, he always pieced together the truth of the war from the countless fragments. It seems like everyone underestimated the power of Flaming Valley. 60 to 70% of Golden City's strength? With such elite troops, even if Golden City went all out, I'm afraid it would be difficult to say that they would win. 60 to 70%? How could they have the nerve to say that? As he sneered, Wang Lu stood next to a pile of corpses. It was a tall and sturdy barbarian warrior, surrounded by dozens of gold-clad celestial soldiers' corpses. The barbarian warrior had countless scars all over his body, and eventually died of exhaustion. However, the celestial soldiers around him, without exception, were all cut into two. Then, the weapon used by the barbarians was just a sharpened stone axe. In terms of wealth, Golden City is the first in this world, followed by Harmony River and Eternal Tree. Even the withered and decaying Gray Mountain can be ranked fourth. There are only stones in Flaming Valley. Besides the stubborn stones, there are only melted and burning stones. The barbarians lived in the mountains, and even having a full meal was an extravagant hope. Therefore, civilization had always been an unfamiliar concept to Flaming Valley. When the people of Golden City were living a life of luxury, the barbarians of Flaming Valley were always struggling for survival. Such harsh conditions created their unparalleled bravery, but it also made them only valiant. Tens of thousands of elite troops of the barbarian race, each one of them is brave but not astute. They have been repeatedly tricked by other people, and have lost miserably. Wang Lu sighed softly as he walked. Lan walked behind Wang Lu and said, "Gray Mountain fought with Flaming Valley 1,000 years ago. If it weren't for our ancestors being familiar with the art of war, I'm afraid there would only be 4 forces left in this world. But after so many years, the people of Flaming Valley are still bold but not astute. It's not that they are born stupid and don't understand the importance of wisdom. It was a unique environment that created a unique civilization. For the barbarians of the Flaming Valley, nothing was more important than martial bravery. In such an environment, it was simply impossible to produce a wise and resourceful person. But now, the situation is different." While speaking, Wang Lu had arrived at a high ground on the battlefield. Overlooking the scenery below, Wang Lu saw more things. In this battlefield, Flaming Valley only dispatched the lowest-ranked slave soldiers to utterly defeat the gold-clad army of Golden City. In Flaming Valley, a warrior who could fight against 10 on the battlefield was not even a qualified warrior. Only those who were exceptionally large and could fight against 10 were the real barbarians of Flaming Valley. In the past, the barbarians who only knew how to roar and charge head-on were cleverly divided into many groups. They appeared at different positions at different times. Perhaps with their intellect, they would not be able to understand the profoundness of timing and positioning. But under the control of a brilliant hand, these unique timing and positioning allowed the barbarian warriors to display an unprecedented combat strength. Although he was not good at military fighting, Wang Lu could still see the brilliance of this. Right now, Flaming Valley has obtained the key to leap forward. Lan surprisingly keenly replied, "Fire spirit?" To be precise, in 9 regions. No, in the Blood Spirit Temple, the person who is best at military fighting, the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect. Wang Lu muttered and then raised his head. "What's his name again?" "Xiang Liang?" "Yes, Xiang Liang. Speaking of which, it's really an oversight. I've thought about everything, but I've neglected to calculate how far Flaming Valley could evolve with the help of a general who can fight against 10,000 enemies. Compared to this, Eternal Tree, Harmony River, and even Gray Mountain, are not worth mentioning. However, senior brother Xiang Liang, going too far is as bad as not going far enough." "How much confidence do you actually have that you dare to challenge Xingjing's sect team alone? Now that you're advancing triumphantly and your momentum is like a rainbow, aren't you afraid that you'll force Qianghua out of the mountain?" On the frontline battlefield, in a land of disorderly rocks, cold wind whistled, blowing away the warmth from Flaming Valley and disrupted the usual law of heaven and earth. In this rocky mountain, the law was distorted, common sense was overturned, and it was difficult for ordinary creatures to survive. It was a daunting land of danger and death. Even the barbarian warriors of Flaming Valley were unwilling to approach it. However, it was also the geographical junction of the war between Flaming Valley and Golden City, a place where the military would have to contend for. In the struggle between the two, there were more than 100 battles. Those who could contend have already fought, and those who could fight have already fought. Golden City had been continuously defeated and had already shown a declining trend. However, if Flaming Valley wanted to completely establish their advantage and truly drag down the throne of the 10,000 years old hegemon, they still needed a crucial war. This disorderly land was the battlefield chosen by Flaming Valley. And on the battlefield, a legion of Flaming Valley was advancing. In the middle of the army, dozens of barbarian giants with red, thorny skin and rock-like muscles surrounded a general who was riding a magma beast. That general was undoubtedly the supreme leader of the legion. It was just that, compared to those tall and sturdy warriors, he looked unprepossessing. His stature was thin, his limbs were slender, and he was wrapped in a reddish-brown animal skin that symbolized the position of General of Flaming Valley. However, that animal skin was sewn for the barbarians of Flaming Valley, so it did not fit his body. At the same time, in contrast to the tall barbarian guards around him, the general looked even more thin and small. However, although his stature was thin and small, he had an inviolable awe-inspiring bearing. When the legion arrived at a place, the general suddenly straightened up on the back of the strange beast, looked around, and then made a decision. Vanguard Army, stop. After resting and reorganizing, you will guard this place. Left Army advance along the mountain road. Without the order, don't stop. Right Army, follow me along the mountain road on the right side. Wait for my order at any time. The faint sound of a command was instantly transmitted into the ears of every soldier. During the march, the warriors who were still whispering to each other suddenly stopped talking. However, after hearing the order, many of them revealed a puzzled look. Are we going to divide the army into 3? So troublesome, dividing the army again. Since this fire spirit became the general, he always divides the army again and again. Obviously, he can kill his way through in one breath, but he always makes it so troublesome. Yeah, why divide it into Vanguard Army and Left Army? How do I know which army I belong to? I heard that Golden City is full of incompetent people who are greedy for pleasure. To fight with them, we just need to kill our way through in one go. This division of army and design, doesn't that mean that we, Flaming Valley, are afraid of them? Humph, look at this thin and powerless fire spirit, how could he be the commander-in-chief of the army? This barbarian legion was the elite soldiers personally selected by the king of Flaming Valley. They were the youngest and most powerful warriors in Flaming Valley. However, these young warriors have not fought under the fire spirit, so they refuse to be disciplined. Their discussion was quite loud, completely disregarding the fact that the commander was right next to them. When the fire spirit general who issued the order heard this, he could not help but frown. This was too troublesome. It was just dividing these thousands of elite soldiers into 3. Was there a simpler military strategy than this in the world? These soldiers of Flaming Valley were only valiant, but they were only elite soldiers, not qualified soldiers at all. He was full of military strategy, but he could not even display 1/10 of it. If it was a real well-tempered elite soldier, he would directly command each soldier. Even if there were thousands of soldiers, they could still be orderly and not in the slightest disorder. As long as the soldiers could follow the command, they would display incredible combat power. In Royal Soldier Sect, many people like to use chess as a metaphor. The commander-in-chief of the battlefield was like a chess player, and the soldiers were the chess pieces. Ordinary chess players would be flustered if they had more than dozens of chess pieces in their hands. Therefore, if they wanted to command tens of thousands of troops, they needed layers of officers to command the soldiers. And the more brilliant the commander, the more chess pieces he could control, the more detailed his command would be, and the more he could operate on the subtleties of the battlefield. And this kind of skill was called micromanipulation in Royal Soldier Sect. And as the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, he had an unparalleled micromanipulation skill among his peers. But now, even dividing the soldiers into 3 seemed to be impossible. He had amazing skills, but he could not display them. Xiang Liang was not annoyed. He looked at the group of provocative barbarian soldiers and lightly said, "Before leaving, His Majesty has authorized me to be the supreme commander. Military orders are like mountains, they cannot be violated. A barbarian soldier took the lead to stand out and pointed the huge stone axe in his hand at Xiang Liang. I heard that His Majesty was deceived by a sinister villain like you, so he appointed you as the commander-in-chief. We, the heroes of Flaming Valley, have always fought in an upright manner. Sinister and cunning tricks, we disdain it. Upon hearing this, Xiang Liang was stunned. He had been commanding the army in Flaming Valley for some time, but this was the first time he heard such an overbearing rebellion. Then, what was even more inconceivable was that he actually saw the agreement in the eyes of the soldiers. Perhaps for those who were proficient in politics, they could think of a lot of things through this scene, but at this time, Xiang Liang only remembered the teachings of his master when he was cultivating in Royal Soldier Sect. A person who only knows how to arrange the troops is not qualified to be a commander-in-chief. A real first-class general must make the officers and men under him sincerely convinced, as if they were his own arm. In contrast to his master's teachings, it was clear that this army was not sincerely convinced, as if they were his own arm. Xiang Liang didn't care why they dared to rebel, nor did he care why the king of Flaming Valley handed over such an army to him. He was the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, so there was only one thing he had to do. In that case, Xiang Liang thought for a moment, then raised his right hand high. A halo spread out from his fingertips and swept across the army. A moment later, the light dissipated, and the original noise in the army was completely extinguished. All the barbarian soldiers stood quietly in the same place. Their eyes, which were blazing and jumping, became indifferent and dull. Very good. Xiang Liang looked with satisfaction at the army that no longer had any objections, and casually dispersed the thousands of souls that he had just gathered. Chapter 412. Just by raising his hand, he was able to destroy the souls of thousands of fierce warriors. This was no ordinary means. Even if it was the cultivator who was the best at manipulating the soul, before reaching the yuanying stage, without truly experiencing the mystery of the soul, it would be difficult for them to have such attainments. Not to mention that Xiang Liang destroyed the souls of the barbarians of Flaming Valley, whose primordial spirit and body were closely connected. Even the cultivator who was the best at capturing souls would find it difficult to pull their souls out of their bodies. Xiang Liang could do it. He raised his right hand high, and a halo of light tamed the unruly barbarian warriors. Although the price was that they permanently lost part of their 3 souls and 7 spirits, on the other hand, these unruly warriors would henceforth become the most loyal soldiers. Or rather, the purest humanoid puppet. Provoking the cultivator of Royal Soldier Sect, who was the commander-in-chief, was one of the stupidest acts in the world. As the commander-in-chief, the cultivator of Royal Soldier Sect could suppress his subordinates with incredible means. Seizing the soul and destroying the body could be described as a life and death power. Although for many people, the difference between the commander-in-chief and his subordinates was only in the title. The reason why the superior was superior lay in power and the subtle relationship between people, not in the substantial power gap. However, Royal Soldier Sect could use this illusory title to form a substantial power and make a substantial suppression. The king of Flaming Valley handed over the military command of Flaming Valley to Xiang Liang, and from that moment on, Xiang Liang had the power to kill the barbarian warriors of Flaming Valley. If the title was not legitimate, it would not be justified, but if it was legitimate, it would be omnipotent. This was the ability of the commander-in-chief of Royal Soldier Sect. Was it inconceivable? It was indeed inconceivable, but just as it was difficult for the mortals to understand how the cultivators could fly on flying swords, it was difficult for the cultivators to understand the commander-in-chief ability of Royal Soldier Sect because of the difference in the stage. The military research of Royal Soldier Sect had reached the point of perfection, which even the 10,000 Arts Sect was far behind. On the battlefield, there were many miracles. The strongest army of Royal Soldier Sect was a monument that stood on top of countless piles of bones after countless trials of blood and fire. The most powerful sect in the 9 regions was Xingjing Sect. It implemented the 9 regions strategy, exerting its fists and feet all over the continent, either openly bullying or secretly suppressing. For a period of time, it even acted without scruples. However, it never dared to openly provoke Royal Soldier sect, because Xinjing sect people were very clear that if the people from Royal Soldier sect were to come down, no one would be able to get away with it. In fact, before the rise of Royal Soldier sect, many 9 regions people had experienced the age of chaos and lost their civilization inheritance. They always thought that the war between cultivators didn't need to pay too much attention to strategy. The so-called strategy was only built on the basis of a group. If there were many people, there would be a need for strategy. Between cultivators, the difference in individual strength was so great that it was enough to make up for any difference in numbers. 10,000 foundation establishment cultivators would not be able to withstand a casual attack from a nascent soul cultivator. Even after setting up the formation for a long time, they still could not stop the formation that the other party had carefully designed. Similarly, different cultivators had different cultivation techniques and different magic treasures. If they forcefully gathered everything together, not to mention sincere cooperation, just the existence of each other could affect each other. For example, it was difficult for the lightning battle body and the first sky true water to coexist. With so many problems, coupled with the fact that the number of cultivators had always been small, the so-called art of war and battle formation were rarely paid attention to. Then, the rise of Royal Soldier sect shattered the common sense of cultivators. No one knew how these barbaric warriors, who had always been incompatible with the traditional concept of civilization, could become so powerful. People only knew that after the rise of Royal Soldier sect, no one could compete with them in battle formation. Very good, the battle preparation is complete. Now, we can proceed to the next step. After completing the integration of the army, Xiang Liang was neither happy nor sad. He just silently adjusted the tactical plan in his mind. The plan to divide the army into 3 was abolished, and a more detailed plan was quickly brewing. In the original plan, there was no soul-snatching step, because even for the lead disciple of Royal Soldier sect, suppressing thousands of elites at once was still a big burden. In the next battle, his strength would at least be halved. However, on the other hand, to be able to command these thousands of people as if they were his own arm, Xiang Liang felt that this step was right. Because with such a strong army, he could appear in an impossible place at an impossible time. The next step is Luojin town. It's really boring. A Xinjing sect cultivator dressed in luxurious clothing faced the fiery red sunset and stretched his body. In the border town of Golden City, Luojin town, tens of thousands of heavy troops had gathered. The originally prosperous town had been transformed into a war fortress. The people walking in the town were no longer busy in substantial town residents, but were fully armed soldiers. As the frontline town of Golden City and Flaming Valley, the war could come at any time. However, on the other hand, after a dangerous fight, no one thought that the war would come so soon. The border between Golden City and Flaming Valley was a long line, and Luojin town was just one of the points. Although it was close to a geographical junction, once it was breached, Flaming Valley could directly drive into the hinterland of Golden City. However, according to the judgment of the Feng Shui master of Golden City, right now, the law of the Rocky Mountain was distorted. Endless rock beasts wreaked havoc in the mountain, making it difficult for anyone to pass through. And with the intelligence of that group of barbarian soldiers of Flaming Valley, even if there were thousands of them, they would only end up dead in the Rocky Mountain, so much so that there was no need for Golden City to send troops to resist. In this way, the border town instead became the peaceful rear. Although there were heavy troops in the town, compared to the real front line, the atmosphere was undoubtedly much more relaxed. If not, how could Xinjing sect team have the chance to station here? Humph, senior brother Jianglu's unplanned sneak attack has caused us to be like street rats in Golden City. A dignified gold spirit being rushed to the front line to command, moreover, he has no real power and is completely a figurehead. This 5 spirits power struggle is simply inexplicable. After the cultivator stretched his waist, he immediately put on an indignant face. Looking at the celestial soldiers and generals in the town, his heart was filled with irritation. Beside him, his two junior brothers simply ignored him and sat cross-legged opposite to each other. Between them, a magical power congealed on the chessboard, fighting fiercely. Senior brother Luo, complain less. Your state of mind is not stable, it's not good for your cultivation. Cultivation, King cultivation. Luo Sihua cursed and then turned around to kick over his junior brother's chessboard. Idling around all day long. Is this how you cultivate? After the chessboard was kicked over, the two junior brothers were not annoyed. With a wave of their hands, the original chessboard came into being again. However, the position of the chess pieces was somewhat different. Ah, junior brother's son, you cheated. Ha ha ha, how could I? Senior brother, you remember wrong. Seeing that his two junior brothers were completely obsessed with the chessboard, Luo Sihua, who had expected better from them, stamped his foot, causing half of Golden Town to tremble. Then, amidst the laughter of his two junior brothers, Luo Sihua soared into the sky and looked down at the ground. There was no purpose, just a habit. As an elite inner court disciple of Xingjing sect, it was a habit to constantly climb up. People often said that Xingjing sect was the #1 sect in 9 regions, and to be able to join the sect was a supreme glory. However, who knew the heavy pressure behind this glory? 9 regions was big and full of strange things, but like Xianghua, Xiangliang, Zhou Mumu, how many of these talented people were there? How many millions of cultivators were there in 9 regions? However, how many of them were blessed by heaven with heavenly spirit root? Luo Sihua was not blessed by heaven. His cultivation qualification relied on massive resources and a bit of luck in exchange for 10 complete spirit root. Compared to those cultivators with natural spirit root, he was already a notch inferior. Not to mention that 10 complete spirit root itself was not the top spirit root. After 100 years of cultivation, he had just reached the peak Shudan stage. If he wanted to go further, relying on his own efforts had little hope, and thus he needed the support of the sect. However, although Xingjing's sect was rich, they never squandered. They were generous to their disciples, but not indulgent. Unless they proved their own value, the sect would never make a meaningless investment. Luo Sihua needed the sect's investment, therefore, he must prove his own value. In his view, joining Xionghua's team was a shortcut to prove his value. In his 100 years of cultivation, his strength was not that strong, but his accumulated experience was not trivial. Compared to those talented junior brothers and sisters, although his strength was not as good, his experience was enough to make up for it. Because of this, he could have a certain position in Xionghua's team. For this hard-won opportunity, Luo Sihua cherished it very much. Therefore, he especially could not bear to see his fellow junior brothers idling around. In his view, every minute and every second was so precious. The air was filled with the smell of opportunity. Even if he was sent to a useless place by Golden City, he still firmly believed that he could make a difference. He would definitely succeed, he would never be so mediocre forever. In the path of cultivation, not everything was destined from the beginning. Self-improvement and perseverance would always be rewarded. It was true that since ancient times, most of the people who ascended to heaven were geniuses, but could it be that mediocre people had no chance? There were. Although they were rare, there were still people who rose to heaven with ordinary talent. Although they were rare, the hope had not been cut off. And if the predecessors could do it, why couldn't he? As long as he seized every opportunity, there was always a glimmer of hope to defy the heaven and change his fate. Although it was only a meager glimmer, like the setting sun that was about to sink into the night, but, as long as he could grasp it. Luo Sihua slightly frowned and stretched out his hand toward the horizon, as if everything was under his control. Then, he suddenly felt a pain in his palm, a piercing pain. Was it because he thought too much that his heart's Tao was unstable, which led to the backlash of his method? In a flash, Luo Sihua's mind surged with countless conjectures. For him to reach where he was today with ordinary talent, taking risks was inevitable, and the side effects could come at any time. However, he soon realized that his guess was wrong. The pain in his palm did not come from himself, but from an external force. Under the external force, his palm had been divided into two halves. Bright red blood gushed out from the cross-section, and his bones and muscles could be clearly seen. At the same time, his field of vision seemed to be cut off from the middle. Before the darkness shrouded him, he seemed to see his own gray brain. The enemy Chi-Ho has been eliminated. In the void, a cold voice could only be heard by the one who spoke. Then, the same cold voice sounded. Full force assault. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.